the art they are doing? Oh, thank you, Paul. Um, um, yeah, so visually they know you can do what they want you to do, but can you do it under the hood? Meaning that can you do it in real time, basically? So that's usually when an artist comes in. So here I got like I think it was like a weekend where I needed to create from a picture, and I had like a budget of 10,000 triangles. This was a long time ago. The triangle count was a little bit different, but usually in artist you always get these kind of hard rules, and they are there a little bit to check if you're reading, kind of like an assignment. So it's very important when we do art tests to always like double check. I think I triple checked that everything was kind of correctly handed in, like texture format and everything. And I landed a job, so I got to work on Walking Dead. It was a very hectic game to work on. It had switched engine 3 times. There is a lot of history behind this game, but basically, we kind of knew that it would be a very hard thing to pull off because when I joined, there was like 1.5 year left on the game, like before release, and basically starting over. It was a very kind of like quick game being made, but I learned a lot, and it was a super cool experience because it was the first time I worked with people that were um, juniors, intermediate, senior, leads, art directors. Like all of those new words didn't exist for me before that. And it was very cool also in terms of having very vast disciplines and also like people from all around the world, basically. This studio was super international. So I always say that during this time, I kind of like forgot to talk Swedish on my free time because it was like English all the time. Um, but yeah, it was a super cool experience. But I think we all knew that the studio would probably have a rough time after this game. So I kind of like still made scenes on this free time. Also because I always have an outlet for that. Like I love building for games, but building for myself is also important for me. So I kept building a little bit, like trying stuff. I went into a little bit stylized again. Um, and I started talking to Ubisoft. They called me. And they called me and asked if I wanted to do vegetation. Um, I hadn't done that much vegetation, but I said yes on a like you don't say no to doing vegetation for an avatar game. So they wanted me to come and talk to them, and that was like they called like before the weekend, and there was like after the weekend. I panicked a bit because I kind of didn't know that much of vegetation, and I knew that there was like a really good vegetation artist working there, so I had to like build up my confidence with like the linguist of vegetation creation. So I built like this avatar scene during the weekend, um, and I took it with me. And I would say that's also a tip from me. Uh, do a little bit like of the extra if you feel like it's the right time and moment. Like sometimes it doesn't work. Like, but I would say I felt like I really wanted this job, and for me it was a little bit like I asked myself like if I were them, what would I kind of like think was a cool gesture, and someone bringing kind of like an art piece from the game they are working shows kind of like yeah I really want to do this. So I brought it with me, and this became my art test. So I didn't have to do an art test after that. And then after I signed, I did this Swedish forest also. Because always when you sign for a studio, there is like a period in between. You very often don't start right away. There are a couple of a month or two between, kind of like. So built the Swedish forest and learned a little bit about photogrammetry. But yeah, then Ubisoft, everything became much bigger. It's a AAA studio now. I would say Starbreeze is a 2A studio, and Ubisoft is like worldwide. So it was a very cool experience, traveling down to Malmö and working with the Malmö team on the Avatar game, learning from specialized people because I became part of the vegetation team. It was the first time for me to work more as a specialized role. Like before that, I was more a general environment artist, doing props, doing kind of architecture, and here it was like main focus was to do vegetation. Still, when you're a vegetation artist, I would say, for these big studios, you still kind of like need to be a little bit of an environment artist. So me and the other vegetation artists sometimes jumped over to other things. For example, like we helped out on like an expansion on Division. We did a little bit like other stuff on Avatar also. But the main thing is usually vegetation. During that time, I actually finished my project I picked when I did the 12-week course. So 6 years later, I tackled the Harry Potter a Great Hall in Harry Potter. I'm going to talk about this later, but it's very, very common to pick too big of a project. And I did exactly that during my first kind of like course with someone. Like I wanted to build a Great Hall, but I never built an environment before. So that became kind of like a start of a scene. And then during my time at Ubisoft, I kind of like felt the urge to prove myself and finish it. So I went back to it, realized I'd done so many mistakes, I started over and then finished it. Was still a quite a big project, even if I had done a little bit before that. Then also I started painting a lot. So I started to do like trying to do a little bit like concept art, a little bit illustrations, and a little bit more painterly style.
Hey, Jacob. Sorry,
Yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
yeah,
I had a question that correlated really nice when
mm,
you were going over the hall.
yeah,
Somebody had asked about how long do these scenes take? And since that one was kind of like an overreach, I think it would be a good time to just kind of like drop that question in there.
yeah. I mean, from start to finish, this was 6 years, of course, but with a big pause. Um, I would say this was probably like a half year when I started it. Like again, um, and it's a bit tricky for me to say because I'm one of those people that like start new scenes all the time, and I'm a little bit like the dog in up. Like when I see like a new idea, I kind of like just go to that. So I always have bunch of scenes. Like currently, I have probably 4 scenes that are somewhat in rolling, and that has always worked for me, like personally. For some people, that would be too messy, but for me, it's always been nice to work on a scene for a month, get a little bit bored on it, and then picking up something else. So, for example, I finished a scene literally today, and that one I started. I think I started at Ubisoft time also, or Fall Damage time. I started like super long time ago, and kind of put it to the side, and then I lost the files. Um, so for me, it's always been that. I would say one thing I would say is that when you're starting out, I would probably not do that. Like I could do it because I had the comfort of having jobs. And I would say like after you enter the industry, it's more about like knowing people and they knowing you and recommending you. So I would say these two, they were a little bit like speed run, I would say. So this one was a month, but it was a very stressful month. And I think this one was like maybe 2 months. So I did this one in December, like I remember like November, end of November, and I kind of like put myself to finish it before going on Christmas break. And it was I literally worked on it like 5 minutes before the train it went and pressed release on ArtStation. And this one I worked on during like the spring basically. And I think it was about like maybe 2.5 months. Um, uh, and this one is kind of like a good one also because that was like the competition of ArtStation. I can't remember, but that was also a set date. And I started planning a lot back then also, like helped me a lot structure. But yeah, basically painting. Great question, by the way. Painting, and at Ubisoft it was like super fun to work on these big worlds. But I always went a little bit like missing a little bit the smaller, like knowing everyone that works on the game. For me, I'm always been kind of keen on that a little bit more, like especially like Ubisoft Stockholm. We work towards like Ubisoft Malmö, like so it was always like a male rather than a person. And for me, it was like a big decision because Ubisoft Stockholm moved over to their own game, and I felt like I usually like to like work on something until it's finished. And if you start something at a AAA, it's probably a couple of years. So I had to like do this kind of like crossroad, and start thinking of other studios to go to, basically. And I saw Fall Damage existing in Stockholm. And for me, it sounded a little bit interesting because it was like started by one of the founders of DICE and some other DICE people. So it felt very, I don't know, like AAA, but with like a small studio size. So it sounded very interesting for me. So they were like about 20, a little bit more than 20 people when I joined. And I think as at maximum we were 60 people. And I joined as an environment lead. So before that, I only been like environment artist, vegetation artist, and now it became like environment lead. And an environment lead is basically there to basically be the spokesperson basically for the environment team when it comes to planning, like taking on responsibility for the environment group from, for example, maybe designers. It's also about making sure that the structure inside of the group works, like a little bit of like a read the room person. So making sure that everyone is kind of like always comfortable in the group and stuff like that. And I tried that a little bit at Starbreeze actually, and I thought it was fun. And I know it's not for everyone, and we're going to talk about roles later in the presentation. So it's not a must to go into being a lead. But yeah, I did lead and then move over to like art director. And then sadly, Fall Damage went under without releasing the game, which is sadly quite common, I would say. Not only now, like this game also kind of released, but never really released. It existed only for a couple of months. So I would say it's quite common. And that's why I always kind of been working on my own stuff, because I own this. Nobody can take it away from me. So during my Fall Damage time, I also joined Vertex School. So I've been at Vertex School for 6 years, and doing kind of like portfolio pieces with the students. I always got kind of like envy seeing them working on their scenes. So I kind of always picked up scenes also, a little bit to show stuff also. So I usually worked on scene, be able to like show a little bit like my approach to things. So I kept doing kind of like environment scenes. But then eventually, I would say last year, I started playing around a little bit with other things. So I did start looking into like more game development, blueprinting, building small games and stuff like that. Um, um, but then after doing this a while, I kind of got the urge back. So I did like a new environment scene. And then I kind of wanted to go back and do a little bit stylization and then animations. So that's kind of what I lost basically. And during this time, I worked basically with Vertex School and then doing some freelancing. So it's been a little bit exploration for me, trying out stuff that you don't always have time, especially when you're like doing art direction or lead. It's less doing art basically. But yeah, and now we are here basically. So that's a little bit the history of me. Paul, I don't know if there was any question coming up that would be fitting that you feel.
So there were a couple questions.
Yeah.
So kind of expanding upon when you were when we were talking before. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Um, so when you were saying like a personal project usually takes you about a month or so to do, there was a question that added on to that about like how long does a studio possibly give you to do a scene?
I mean, these took that. I would say the other ones haven't done that. Um, this one was a bit shorter, but some of these are quite long, and it's like I said, like doing other scenes at the same time, basically. I would say it's a very hard question. I mean, if we look at these places, it's not just one person working on it, so it becomes a whole other dynamic, I would say, because you have level designers working on these things at the same time environment artists work on it. So I can actually jump in and show how these level looks quickly. So this is a bit messy, but I think I have like a preview. Yeah, here. So this is how it can look before environment come on it, basically. And then it's a slow process finding the voice of the place, basically. And what I want to say with that is basically that something that's very good to learn is that you don't own kind of like things in the same sense. I feel like I always try to think as myself as a game developer or game dev instead, because then I think it's going to be a much more fun experience because things are always going to be kind of like taking away, restarted, especially when you work on like a shooting game like this. Like if the beautiful wall you worked on for weeks is hindering gameplay, it sadly needs to go. And I think that's a good thing to kind of be ready for. And finding smart ways of working around that. For example, we built our game like this in the end, but very like blocky, but having kind of like the main shapes there, and just played against that a lot. Um, and then kind of detailed it more, played along against that a lot. And these are very fast to make, so it doesn't hurt as much when you have to like remake it to make the gameplay. Because in the end, like most games, I would say the key aspect is like a nice gameplay experience. There is of course kind of art games also, but I would say that's very common. But yeah, great question. Any other question, Paul?
I have a question.
Yep.
So, previously you say something about your own couple images and designs. So how does it happen in terms of NDA? Who owns the designs at the end of the contract or project? Um,
I would say it depends on the studio, like, but I mean the studio owns everything, right? Um,
yes.
but are you thinking about like showing things and stuff like that, or more like what you can do with it after you're done with the game?
Okay. So at the moment of showing that in your portfolio, do you have to ask permission or just like when the project ends and contract is like you're allowed to show all your
Very,
designs and art?
yeah, yeah, very depending on the studio, I would say. Like big studios, usually it's a bit more tricky, has to go through a lot of legal, Smeagol stuff. This
Yeah.
studio, I mean, I sat next to kind of the founders, so then you have a little bit more of a like kind of like you can just ask them, and a nice studio usually they are totally open. So ours, like this studio, was super open, so I could always like show things in these. Like these are sometimes not seen in other games, and for them it was totally fine me showing this. And I
Okay.
think that comes down to it being a mid-sized studio and not like a AAA studio.
Yes. And one small question before I finish. So, let's say another company wants to kind of copycat those designs. Is that allowed or not? I mean, can you use the same templates? Um,
I mean,
I'm not sure.
studios have done copies of CS Dust forever, so technically there is no kind of like it's tricky
Well,
because also like the game industry has like a modding scene, right?
mhm.
I would say like usually the bigger studios have bigger problems when it comes to like gun manufacturers or car manufacturer. They have to like cross-check all of what they're doing. So I would say like the bigger the studio gets, the more careful they are with that, because then they
Yeah,
have eyes on us, basically.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yep, no worries. Um,
There are a few questions, but
yeah,
I'm saving them because I don't want to necessarily bog you down before we get to, I do know we have a Q&A at the end.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we can start with the presentation, and um, during the presentation, feel free everyone to write questions, and Paul will munch them together, basically. But then in the end, we'll also we have a QA, so feel free to ask them. But yeah, I want to start to talk about portfolio. Um, I've done portfolios myself. I've looked at portfolios and I hired through portfolios. So this is kind of like a little bit my view on it. So what is a portfolio? For me, a portfolio is a gallery of work, and it's there to convince the studio you're applying to that you have the skills, meaning that you can create what they are creating, taste, like visually, you can create what they are doing, in the technical, like in a technical way, meaning that you can do it in like real time, like with optimization, stuff like that. And these three things you need to kind of prove. And there is kind of ways to prove those three things. So for me, what is a strong portfolio? It's targeted, meaning that it's the style and quality kind of benchmark is kind of hitting where you are applying towards. So if you're doing kind of like a realistic portfolio, you maybe not going to be that kind of lucky when you're applying to maybe mobile games or stylized games. Of course, sometimes that can happen. I would say have it being very kind of targeted. That's why it's very good to find like that dream studio. And I mean, like a dream studio for me was like Naughty Dog, which is a visual style that is, I would say, quite broad. Like that style can open up the doors for Starbreeze for me and Ubisoft because they are also doing simuralism. But for me, focusing in on Orthodog helped me a lot because I could just study what they are doing and learning from that instead of like looking on like all the like styles and games. So it helps a lot. Um, and then being concise, meaning that you should only have your best work, especially when you're starting out. It's very easy to kind of like throw everything on your art station. And I think if we need to always be honest, asking ourselves, like, is this the best work? Maybe I have a little bit like even not finished work I'm putting up. There is other places to put that. I use Artisation blog a lot for that, or I have like Instagram konto, etc. Because I like to share things early on also. But your art station should just be kind of like finished stuff that you feel like is the quality of what you're applying for. And then that you can show taste and skill. And I would say here it's all about presentation. Uh, so I see that a lot. People building like beautiful environment art pieces, but then they don't do that like nice presentation with it, meaning that kind of like your breakdowns are maybe very quickly made. And I feel like when we spend so much time building our amazing environment scene, and I've done that myself, we kind of forget the last part, which is kind of the important part, and it's the technical part, showing that you can do things correctly, meaning that you do show breakdowns. And we're going to talk more about breakdowns, but we'll also say like showing breakdowns in a beautiful way. And how can we kind of like come up with those beautiful ways? I would say study how others do it. I would say it's become a little bit almost like a thing to show breakdowns in a beautiful way. And I think like Indiana Jones, like their breakdowns recently have kind of gone a little bit viral in ArtStation because of that, because they're presenting it in a very tasteful way. And I'm being professional, meaning that we look over all the spelling and stuff like that, and making sure that everything is readable and clear to navigate. I would say that's why I also always recommend to use ArtStation instead of like your personal website, because I always try to sit close to, like, especially when I started, I always try to sit close to people that are hiring, because I thought like, okay, I can just listen into them and I know how those people think basically. So that was always what I did. And then myself ended up looking over portfolios after a while. But something I noticed was that people kind of like became very kind of like comfortable sitting on ArtStation and knowing exactly where everything is. So I think just taking away clicks, taking away annoyances is very important. So having a clean, simple ArtStation is usually perfect. And then, of course, like if we are a web designer and we can do a perfect website, maybe, but then it needs to be really, really good, I would say. So I want to talk about two different kind of paths that I see. We talked a little bit about that. I went into both, basically. So we have the generalist and the specialist. And I would say studios always consist of both of these. So a generalist is someone that can kind of do a little bit of everything in the studio. They are a little bit maybe doing kind of like hard surface, architecture, organic. They maybe dabble around in kind of like level design and stuff like that. Johnny here, for example, I know he did like blueprinting and stuff like that. So kind of like interesting a little bit in everything. And then we have people like Chico Spans, who is like super focused on vegetation and become kind of like one of the best in the industry on that. And I would say both are equally important in a studio and in the industry. So this comes down more to personality, I would say. And for me, it was important to try being a specialist to know, is that for me, or am I like, it's hard to know in the beginning. So that's kind of why I jumped into the vegetation role. And I love doing vegetation still, but I love a lot of other things. So I would probably cater more to a generalist, I would say. And then I would say another thing that we usually see a split in a group would be kind of like the art side and the tech side. So usually in a group you have different types of individual. Some are more kind of like on the art side and some are more on the tech side. And there's often a very kind of like a blend over also. Because of course, as an environment artist, we need to have some technical know-how, even if we are the most artist. But I would say usually these interests leads to different paths maybe later. So maybe someone like Tyler Smith that is maybe more catering on art side becomes maybe more towards like art director or kind of driving the artistic style of a IP. And then maybe on the tech side, it becomes more maybe like a tech artist, finding the solutions, how we build things, building the tools. And it's so powerful having kind of like an environment artist that does tech, because they understand what is needed and they can build like according to that. But like I said, like these both paths still need to have a little bit cross section basically. So if you do art, you still need to know a little bit tech, and if you're interested in tech, you need to be able to do art still. So now I'm going to switch and talk a little bit about the anatomy of a great portfolio. So I have an example here from Martine. So I would say a good portfolio should show a couple of things. I would say the main aspect as an environment artist is, of course, having an environment scene. So showing that you can build on a larger scale. You can tell stories. You can use typical workflows like modularity, vertex painting, to create like a believable place. But then it's also good a little bit like having some hero props in your portfolio. Even if usually as an environment artist, we are focusing more on the big picture, I think it can always be good to show that we can jump on and do a prop. So here, for example, Martina did like a dog cage as a single portfolio piece, basically, and then did a giant courtyard. And that can always be good to do a little bit exploration and show that we are open for exploration. So I would say like specialized, like I said before, specialized roles. It's hard to know if it's our calling. So sometimes it's like good to test that out on our free time and maybe show that we do that, because it shows that we are kind of open to try things. So for example, Martina here built a birch forest basically with speed tree. And now she has that in her portfolio and shows that she's comfortable doing kind of vegetation, and that can lead to maybe a role like it happened for me. And I want to show, so these are 3 separate projects, but I think you can do a similar thing in one project. So I think that's kind of cool. Like you can either do them like split, or like Jacobo here. He did everything in one scene. And of course it becomes a bigger project then, probably, where he basically built hero props inside of the scene, and kind of like put them so close to the camera, so it's almost like a prop study, and then a lot of specialization in also the scene. So I think can go both paths, and I think sometimes it can be nice after a big environment scene to maybe jump on a prop. So like not always having to build super large, basically. So environment. Environment art. So I'm going to talk a little bit about like important parts of environment art. So I think this is maybe the most important one. At least for me, I love this part of environment art, and it's about telling stories. So of course, as environment artists, we have the problem. We have an environment, but we have no people inside telling the story, usually, especially when we build portfolio. It's like an empty place. So it's so important to become a storyteller, to create stories that just happened or happened a longer time ago and make it believable. And the more you kind of push that into your scene, the more it's going to kind of speak to the audience, the people that are looking at it. So really pushing in on this can really make a place feel almost like it's alive. Someone just left and closed the door, basically. Then we have composition and lighting. So setting up like a really good lighting and a really good composition, I would say makes or breaks a scene usually. It shows that I would say it's like the taste test, I would say. We talked about taste before. It shows that we understand how to curate colors, positioning of camera, positioning of our subject matter, which is all quite hard things to do, like especially like getting all of them right. It's a very kind of like good tool to show that we have like the taste needed, basically. So I would say also like lighting and composition, super valuable. And then something that maybe in the past was not that, I would say a lot of people were very bad at showing this, but I would say now it's become a quite thing that everyone shows, which is good. I think this is so important nowadays to show, and it's kind of like process behind. So showing how you work with different environment tools to create your environments. And of course, these pictures are maybe not always the most like it's not a rendered scene, but I live for these. Like I love seeing someone doing a doodle and then modeling over that doodle. Because it shows kind of like a side that we don't see that often. We only see like the finished rendered art. So it's always fun to see these, and it's also like we can kind of like understand. Okay, this person understands environment art, and maybe if you have enough of these things, like maybe you can nudge away art tests, because you show kind of like, okay, because what we talked about, an artist is there to prove that you can do in the correct way. But if you present all of the things you have built and you show that you can do it in the right way, the artist might not come up. And then like we talked about specialized skills, so we can kind of deepen our focus on certain parts. I would say like vegetation is usually something that comes up. But I would say same with like VFX, like creating atmosphere with VFX. Maybe go deeper into lighting, creating like different light scenarios, or going kind of on the tech side and building more kind of like deep technical solutions for how we create our environment art. So I usually say it can be nice to sprinkle in one of these slightly, maybe build a little bit like vegetation in the scene, but don't have to like build a lot. Like maybe add some grass, and then you have starting to have that knowledge a little bit. And then art direction. So I'm going back to this with like knowing taste, basically. So I think like curating your scene to be cohesive, kind of like in art style, can be very hard, I would say, especially when you're starting out. So many things to learn. So being able to show that off is super strong. And I would say like there is ways to do it. Like one way is to kind of like have your North Star. So for me, it was like Naughty Dog. So I kind of like obsessively looked at the Uncharted and Last of Us, studied them. How did they do things? Put my things next to it. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And that can be a quite good help when starting out. To kind of like push your scene to be kind of like a certain art direction style. Because I think like when you're starting out, like coming up with your own art direction, it's not that many that can do that. I know that Beatrice, I think, is a 2D artist also. So she had kind of like that ability before kind of going into 3D. I think the Gilliman here is Shifu. So it's kind of like inspired by that game series. Then showing optimization. So showing that we can build things properly in terms of maybe how many materials we use for an object, or how our wireframe looks like, or how we kind of solve certain problems, like with trim sheets and stuff like that. And then texture and materials. I think this one almost is a specialized role because we have something called like shader artist or material artist. But I think it's very powerful to be able to do this a little bit, because environment scene are so kind of like dependent on good material use. We can of course kind of work with like the fab, like Quixel textures, and maybe blend them together and curate them that way. But I think adding a little bit in on this can really help us in. And I think we talked a little bit about this, but presentation skill, I think, can really help a portfolio piece. So we built like our beautiful environment scene, and then we kind of like just put our props in a pile underneath loft in the ArtStation post, almost like packaging your portfolio piece in a beautiful way. I would say puts your portfolio kind of like in a kind of like a category that not many are in, basically, and you're going to be remembered. So I always remember people that are kind of presenting in a beautiful way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about common mistakes and how we address them.
I had a couple questions if
Yep.
you're open to hear a couple.
Yes, of course.
Sorry, let me know if you'd like me to interrupt a little more frequently. I just was trying to wait for a good time.
No, I think it's perfect. We are at new topic, so
Okay. So I had one question from Will. who is asking how common or difficult is it for an artist to transition from, like, say, prop artist to environment artist, tech artist, within a single studio?
I would say it's if you have a good lead, they will recognize your interest. So people leave studios, roles get opened, like needs gets open, or a new project needs a certain skill. If you have a good lead, they can read kind of your interest and probably will put you in that position, if that answers the question. So usually I would say like vegetation is a good example of that. Like not it's not always like a studio looks for an environment art vegetation artist. First, maybe we look inside of the studio, maybe look at a little bit like the people that work in the studio and what they've done on their art station. Oh, this person have done a little bit vegetation. Maybe they want to kind of deep dive in vegetation, and then you give them the time to learn it. You don't kind of like, okay, you need to work as fast as a vegetation artist now. No, it becomes kind of like a nice thing for them. They get the time, kind of paid time to learn something new, and you get someone that can do vegetation. So I hope that answered the question.
Definitely, it sounds like a good answer. There was like three questions
Yeah.
that essentially are asking the same thing. I had three different people asking about targeting your portfolio,
Mhm.
and they're talking about the fact that in their own portfolios, they're not sure if it's okay to have some stuff that's more prop based, and then they have some environment stuff, and then they have some let's say environment I'm sorry, more material stuff that might be meant for games, film, or virtual training. So I'm just kind of piecemealing a few of these together. So basically, I think what the question is when you talk about a targeted portfolio,
Mhm.
um, is it okay to have a little bit more towards, like, have some stuff for games, but maybe also have some stuff for film and other things as a more junior artist when you're trying to get a job and you haven't established yourself?
Yeah, or maybe you can set up two arts, like two portfolios, maybe. I don't know. Because I think there is a quite grand value of just like, for example, when I started, I only had two pieces basically when you went into my art station. Um, and so there was not like if you're just kind of like have a wall of things to click. I'm going to talk about that later in the slide. Maybe the person that's looking at your portfolio will never click on all pictures because they maybe need to go through 200 portfolios. So it's a little bit also like you gambling basically, because if you want them to look at the two very specific pieces, they might miss one because you have too many things basically. So it's a bit tricky situation. Like I had the same problem because I like to paint, so kind of wanted to show that also. But in the beginning, I basically just put that on other websites and gave that away when the situation was accordingly. So and that way I kind of did what you call it, children book illustration and stuff like that, but not through my art station. Like that was through other means basically. And I think like when I interview artists and they have like those different interests or different knowledges from other venues, I think that's always a positive. But it's more about like getting through the first kind of like check-in is always tricky. But yeah, I hope that answered the question.
I have a
Absolutely.
question. Sorry. Is so about portfolios. So you're saying it's better to have it, the picture right away to see it instead of like having to click like each link and all that. Kind of like kind of like a sideways thing, like a scrolling thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Okay.
would minimize as much click as possible, basically. Because if you have someone having to look through like 100 portfolios a day, like they get
Yeah.
happy if they meet a portfolio that is curated.
Yeah, you might get skipped just by watching all that linking and all that. Okay.
There's one more
Well,
question
yeah.
that just came up. person was asking, how would a studio or someone in the industry look at a person having two portfolios or two distinct different social media presences?
I think they're not gonna know. Like usually, as far as I know, we open basically what's getting sent to us. It's not like you're doing kind of a investigation on other places. So when you apply to a studio, you put in the portfolio you're applying with. We don't have time to look at other things, especially if it's a bigger studio. Like then you have like hundreds of portfolio to go through, right? So I think for the most part, like safe. So basically, the portfolio you send in is the one that's going to be looked at, basically. Any other
I've
questions, Paul?
seen I've seen people that they make videos like showing other artwork. I've seen couple portfolios like that. Like they put all that art and everything on a video, like a short 30-second video, something like that. What you recommend about that?
I would say it's probably more towards movies. In games, we don't like. I think in early 2000 I saw that, but it's very rare nowadays. Like I would say, of course you can do videos of your portfolio scenes, and I would say that can be nice, but usually you want just to have like curated portfolio scenes basically with pictures and maybe a video if the video is good, but not like sending a video clip. At least I haven't seen that in a long time. I know it was very common in the past. Paul, any other questions?
I think that's about it. There was
Hey,
one question that kind of I realized plays on what we were talking about. Kayla had asked if she has like a 50-50 mix of realistic and stylized. Would you also recommend potentially having two different portfolios, or mixing them is okay?
I know the pain. I'm a 50-50 person also. I love stylization. I love sim realism. I would say in the beginning, I was very kind of pointed on just having my realistic stuff on my portfolio. I had a lot of stylized art. I mean, I worked on an indie studio with stylized art, but I didn't put that on that portfolio because I wanted to make sure that it was basically curated. Nowadays, I would say probably like if you have worked on a game and it's stylized, I think that still is quite valuable, showing that you have worked in a game environment. But I would maybe not having kind of like personal projects being kind of like all the styles, because it becomes a little bit like the question for the studio, like how invested is this junior into the art style we're doing, or are they maybe like a little bit leaning towards other venue basically. Then we might go with a person who is obsessive with the style we're doing basically. And I think that helped me a lot with like the Walking Dead game, because I did Last of Us scenes, and it's kind of the same kind of like post-apocalyptic world. So it was very fitting. So I was very lucky that that game at my time was developed in Sweden. And sadly, that's a big part also of all of this. It's a lot of luck, like a lot of things together happens, and then but I think we can build up luck with doing kind of things correctly. But there is always like a hint of luck also. Um, any other questions, Paul?
Just we've had a couple come up, but
Yeah,
the one that I think is really important is the AI dreaded question: will
yeah.
they take our jobs? I kind of harken back to when I was in school and CG just became a big thing in like Y2K, and like everybody was like, "Oh, great, these people with Photoshop are going to take our jobs."
Yeah, I mean, I think if someone gives you like a this is what's going to happen, I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen, because there is so many kind of like I don't know, things playing into this. Like what I see right now is that the game industry will have a very hard time introducing AI in the beginning, at least, because I feel like the people that play the games are very against it. So I think that's gonna kind of slow down the process a little bit. In the past, game industry has always been very fast at adopting things, but I mean we can see from the Larian discussion happening in December, that kind of backfired kind of like quite harshly. I think in the future, like if you ask me personally, I think we're gonna have probably like games that are like AI games, but then we're gonna also have a customer base that kind of want to play handcrafted stuff. So probably going to be a split there. What that's going to do with the big industry, I think it's very hard to say. So I think it like very hard to like pinpoint what's going to happen. I personally think it's so important to keep learning fundamentals, because I think even if like AI became like completely forced on us, I think like fundamentals will always play a like big role. Like I think you can tell if someone has like good fundamentals. And then for me personally, like I do art because it's fun. So like I don't see a reason to not keep doing. Like I like the process of learning and struggling and figuring out. Like now I learned with my latest scene animation. That was what do you call it? I only know the Swedish and English word, but up and down basically. And I like that part. But then, yeah, going to probably have big studios that jump on the AI thing, and it's going to be a little bit like fast food basically, or fast fashion. But then we're going to maybe have big studios that are kind of like the voice of curated art. And then indie, probably we're going to have indie studios that uses probably AI to be able to build bigger than they could before. But then we probably have even more in the industry studios that are kind of like still doing artist things. So I hope that answered the question somehow.
I think it came across well. I don't want to bog you down too much more, so this way we can continue on.
Yep. Common mistakes and how to address them. Yep. So now we are at that ones that we talked a little bit about. Quantity over quality. So I think so important to cure it all the time in the beginning. Like nowadays, like when you are in the industry later, it's like we talked before, it's more about like just knowing the person that can recommend you. So it's more about they know what you can do. No, it's just that a person kind of recommends you and that you are a nice person to work with, etc. But yeah, so here's a little bit the example I talked about. If you go to an ArtStation post and you have your gold nugget of a scene in the beginning and end, a tired art director who has clicked through 50 ArtStation pages probably just clicks the first 3 ones and missed the last one. I know there always been like when I started, everyone said like put the strongest first and last, because that's where people are going to click, but you never know. So that's why I would like just as good you can kind of curate. And it can be hard to do it yourself. So sometimes what I did when I started, I was part of communities. I asked there. I reached out to people in the industry or peers at university where I studied, basically. And that's kind of what I did with my portfolio when I started applying in the beginning. I even had one less. I had 2 environment scenes, and that was what I was applying with. And yeah, I just wanted to show this example also a little bit like how I learned in the beginning. When I built my abandoned hotel scene, I didn't have anyone to ask that many questions. Like I was a little bit like always struggling. in the beginning. Later, I found actually a community where that kind of fixed the problem. But especially in the beginning, like how do I kind of reach high quality? So what I did was put my things next to this game I was like always like looking up to, and just like every day trying to like find things that sticks out with my scene until I kind of couldn't see it anymore. And I think it's a little bit like master studies when you are a classical painter. We do master studies, and I call this a little bit the same. Like we learn by kind of imitating in the beginning. And I think it's totally fine to do that in the beginning. Especially if we want to kind of apply to, like, if we're imitating Naughty Dog and want to work at Naughty Dog, it's like makes sense that we are imitating. But it was very nice being able to jump into this game, looking at like clinching against the wall and looking at all the and like themes and like seeing, okay, they do mistakes also, or they don't fix these things. Maybe I don't have to focus on it. So it's a really good teaching basically for me to always kind of like and looking at this. And I remember putting this as my background image to remind my every day, like, is it anything I can like still fix basically? So and I want to talk about another thing that helped me a lot. We're going to talk a little bit how I went about that a little bit later in the presentation. But I think it's very important to look at like as juniors who are getting hired nowadays. And it can be a little bit like intimidating and a little bit like tricky to look at like really strong scenes. But I think like it's a honest way to look at it and like understand, okay, we need to get here. I usually put the artist's name on my presentation. I forgot to do that here. So sorry about that. I might update that in the mail, but I'm going to link to this this ArtStation collection I have of juniors to everyone. But yeah, I want to pick out one from them, because one thing I think we will have to remember is that these portfolios that are getting to a studio, they have a lot of history behind them. So they have a lot of art behind them that made them get there. And I think that's also a very nice thing to know. That takes away stress, I feel like. So nowadays, when I learn something new, I went through the environment art part, like struggling and building a lot of different tests and figuring out things. So nowadays, when I learn, for example, animation, I know it's not going to be the best in the beginning, and it's going to take a while. And I think knowing that and embracing it almost, I think helps a lot, because then it takes away that tough part of doing art, basically. So next one, we have talked about a little bit presentation, and I think this is so important, so I kind of like reiterate it. So I talked about that a little bit before. I remember always artists that present in a very nice way. So here we have 3 examples, and I'm never going to forget these 3 artists, because they have so much character in just how they present. They have like these portfolio pieces have logotypes. They have fonts that fits the theme of the portfolio piece. And for me, that shows that they care that extra, like a little bit extra mileage of presentation. And I think for an art director, when they hire, like seeing someone doing that shows that they have something in them that kind of like wants to always present in the best way. And I think that's a super valuable thing. So I would recommend to study good presentation on ArtStation and try to learn from them and slowly applying your own twist on it, basically. And then a very common one, copy tutorials kind of one-to-one and put on your ArtStation. I think it's a bit tricky because like this one from Simon Fuchs is a very common one. And I think most people that worked in the industry will recognize this. And the only thing you're saying is that you can follow a tutorial. So I think a better solution would be looking at this like I remember watching this tutorial. It's a super good tutorial, but I would maybe look at it and then applying it on a new object. Maybe a walkie-talkie, maybe a Game Boy, but something else. So you learn from it and then you apply it to something new. And that's super valuable. And then the biggest one, no breakdowns. So now we're gonna go into a long breakdown session here. So I think I said that before. In the past, this was very underused, but nowadays I think it's becoming more and more common. We see more and more people doing this basically, and doing it in cool, smart ways also. So first one, show your process. So a fun thing you can do when you build an environment scene is setting up your camera very early on, and just take your photos every other day. And then after that, you have a GIF of your creation being created. And I would say these. I remember when I did these and put them on Twitter when that was still kind of like a good place to put art on and spread your name. I would say not so good anymore for spreading like portfolio stuff like that. But it's a very, like I would say LinkedIn, for example, like movement is always good. So it's a quite good like marketing tool for your portfolio scene. But it's also fun to see. It started from some gray boxes and became a beautiful art piece. Modularity. So this is the backbone of environment art. Like environment art is being built always of these Lego pieces, and the reason is one, it's much more easy to curate a single piece, like a wall with a window is much easier to fix than if you build the whole house and you have to always update the whole house. But then also optimization wise, the rendering is much more happy when we are building in these pieces because something called culling. So when you look at the game, what's behind you is not being rendered actually. So if everything is built by pieces, very little things will be always seen basically. If we built all in big houses, if you saw the corner of the house, you would render the whole house and that would not be so good. So showing that we understand this concept and that we also understand that we need to build in certain aspect ratios to make life easier. So usually build in by like 2 meters, 4 meters, 8 meters to be able to UV map easier, but also to snap easier on the grid. So I like the last example here from Palia. You can even see the grid lines. So they clearly show that these are on grid and that they are kind of like a 4x4 session. And a UV layout. I would say this is like extra important if you do like props, showing that you are packing right, maybe that you're flipping things over so you don't kind of like spend unnecessary UV space. And then having fun here again with presentation. So we have Oscar Stampe here, a super fun way of presenting a wireframe by doing kind of like the blueprint thingy. Texture maps, so they can also be presented in many fun ways. We can break them down like the first image here, where you see each section, how it's being constructed. And here is a tip, like when you learn material editing, like when you start learning materials, I would always look for these. Like they're very good at showing these on Assassin's Creed, for example. Here you get a blueprint on how your normal map should look like, how your roughness should look like, how your albedo should look like, your base color. You get like a blueprint here, and you can study it, and then you get like, okay, this is kind of like how I should kind of look like value-wise, basically. It's super powerful to look at these when trying to figure out how to create good materials. But yeah, material layouts. So this can also be good to show, like when we build materials inside of Unreal, showing that we work cleanly and we don't leave a mess behind. So I like these because they show, yeah, very clean layouts. And then the last one from Jolan, I think these are super good. So in this post, Jolan shows also kind of his clean setup, but he has this GIF also. I think these are super useful for like the art directors that hasn't done art in a long time. Maybe they don't understand the spaghetti thingies basically. So for them, it's not that interesting. Like they don't understand it. But if you have a GIF like this, they can see it happening basically, like the cool vertex painting, shipping off the wood color. That's super. And usually it's the art director who's kind of looking at your portfolio. So that's always a recommendation. GIFs that shows the technical things you are applying into your portfolios. Reference and inspiration. I'm a big proponent of reference. I think reference will always increase your fidelity of your scene, and showing that you understand that, I think, is super powerful. So one of my favorite reference board is Martinez reference board. It's super organized, but it's also like have so much knowledge in it. Like if you zoom into it, you can see she investigated everything that comes into this place, and that's why that scene became as good as it became. The more we look at reference, the more we can capture what we're after, basically. Another one I really like is sketches and blockouts. So showing kind of like early idea creation or early figuring out things can also be very interesting, especially nowadays you post your environment scene and then you a couple of weeks later do a breakdown of that environment scene. So you do another post. And in that breakdown scene post, I would just put stuff like this in. So for me, it's super interesting to read words of someone explaining how they think or seeing how they approach a problem. So I think showing this is super valuable and always interesting for someone that's hiring. And then props. We can show those also in different ways. We can put them nicely up like Michael here, or we can show how we went around and worked smartly like Raja here, where flipping the wood, you only need to work on half of the wood, or Jacob here showing kind of like all the texture maps that's are being applied and showing that every texture map here has like good intent to them. And then lastly, wireframe. Like I would say wireframes slowly, like we can have quite a lot triangle count nowadays. Especially if nanite becomes a thing, then triangles is not going to matter. But of course, not everyone is on nanite yet, and not everyone is on Unreal ever. So for a lot of studios, this matters still. And we kind of want to be broad with our applications. So I would kind of like always show a little bit wireframe and show that you understand kind of like the importance of wireframe. Talk a little bit about picking a project. So I think this one is something we all has experience. The big, what should I do next? I want to talk a little bit about scope. So I talked earlier about my Harry Potter scene. I did basically this. I was super excited climbing that giant mountain. And I basically didn't even go up the mountain. And I think it's very easy to kind of be drawn to these like beautiful epic scenes. But if we never like ever kind of like been in Unreal, it's fairly like likely that we're not going to succeed. So I always try to think like if I learn something very completely new, so I'm going to go back to animation because that's kind of where I'm now. How I started was do the bounce ball first, like the classic one, like make a ball bounce, and not setting up to animate a character. And I think kind of applying that to all the different fields we are learning to. Same with vegetation. Like I wouldn't jump on a tree the first thing I do. Do grass first, and then learn from that. Goes faster to fail. I think failing is part of learning. We do grass. It works fairly good, but it's not the best looking grass. We do it again with the knowledge we did first time with the grass. And slowly we get quite good at it, and we add a flower. And then we add a bush and then a tree. But yeah, I think, but it's quite easy to kind of like still lean towards something that is a bit big to us. I think just that honesty, like, is it the first time I'm doing this? Maybe I should like just do smallest possible and just do it good. Like, kind of learning how to go from start to finish. And I think that's much easier when it's very small. So I like these two scenes because they are like visually beautiful, but they have also like a very smart approach to kind of learning from building something small first, like something very like the first image is very kind of like focused into to a corner piece instead of building the whole room or this wall like wall. And it doesn't matter, it's like a diorama, like that's not the whole house. Like it's visually beautiful, and I'm always remembering this piece. I need to add the artist names. This is an old presentation. Nowadays I always add the names. But yeah, I want to show kind of approach I did a lot when I kind of worked on concepts sometimes or did a portfolio piece. When we looked at this whole picture, like we want to kind of start building it. But I always ask myself, like, what if I just kind of like zoom in on a place and build that first? And if that small piece goes well and I'm having fun, and I'm like, because when I build that small piece, I'm going to kind of create the materials. I can kind of apply them to the rest of the piece later. But it's so much nicer to just zoom in and then push fidelity on that zoomed in place, basically, like really pushing it. And probably it's going to be more eye catching than like this giant place that maybe feels a bit empty because we don't have like time to fill it up completely with like set dressing, storytelling. Much easier to kind of zoom in and work very kind of like focused in the beginning. Any questions, Paul, like before we jump over to job hunting?
Sure. There is actually a decent question about job hunting.
Yeah.
So, let me just see. All right. So one question was asking, are you more hireable if you know software like Houdini, um, which is really, really hard to learn? So they just want us to know if that makes them more marketable, or if that's something that would just be kind of like, I'll kind of let you answer it from here.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about going towards the tech line and going towards the art side. So I would say both personalities equally important in a group. When I worked with Fall Damage, I was very lucky to have two people that were more artists on the artist side and two that were more on the tech side. Both sides could do the other things, but they were kind of like really pushing that side. So I would say if you have a really strong interest in Houdini, like totally. One thing I would say, like Houdini, maybe very few studios have like have that integrated to their workflows. So I would say like maybe I would start with like material editing in Unreal, which is a bit broader, or material editing in Designer, which is also a bit broader. But if you have like the true passion to do like Houdini and you be like can sit for hours with it, like I wouldn't stop there basically. I think like knowing Houdini can help you in some kind of like job parts basically. But I would say like there's not that many like junior Houdini artists. Like maybe if you go into tech art, junior tech artist, but same here. Like every studio I've been to, it's been kind of like Houdini has been picked up but never used. So the problem with Houdini is like you need someone that's driving it, like pushing it into the studio and making it part of the studio. And if you don't have that person, it's going to just be kind of like a cool thing that the studio pays for but never use.
Totally understand that. Let's see. So another question was coming. A person was asking, how important is a degree in getting a job in the game industry?
Uh, so I have a degree, but I have never taken it out. So I would say not at all. I would say the only thing like what I've heard is like as a Swedish person, if I want to work in the state like America,
Mhm.
then a degree is important. But other than that, I would say not.
All right. And let's see. Let me see. No, no. Just looking for any other questions. Oh, there was one just came up a second ago. Let me just see. Person was asking about like jobs within regions and working for different countries. He was wondering what country is like best for gaming, for the game industry. Because
Good
I know like
question.
Spain has like a lot. I know United States has a lot. Europe has, there's a lot of places that have a lot of stuff going on.
I would be a little bit. Sweden is quite good also. It's tricky. I would say like some countries are more kind of leaning towards outsourcing, and some are more kind of like having studios. So that kind of plays in a role a little bit. Um, I'm going to show a website later that can be quite nice. Game dev map.
Mm.
Everyone can type that in already. It kind of brings up like the world map, and you can click on all the cities you want, and you can see all the studios that exist in that region basically. And I'm going to talk a little bit about like my approach to navigate the cluster of studios in the world. But yeah, I would say like Sweden is big, England is big, like you said, Spain kind of. But then like of course like it's the States, but the States is not like a country like scale wise. It's like so large. It's kind of like almost like looking at Europe as a general thing.
And then I have a question. Someone was asking let me see. They were asking, was actually being great for before, with their portfolio.
Mhm.
Is it good to keep everything on one page, or should they break it up into like their post and their breakdown?
I would say if you have a really good breakdown, I would break it apart. But if it's just kind of like you're showing, I don't know, your props and one material, like then I feel like you're not respecting the time of the person who's looking at your portfolio. But if you're building like a really, really strong breakdown, then I would separate them, meaning that you're going through what we talked about with the breakdown session.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I usually say to my students. And then Will was asking about entering into the industry. He was asking, would you recommend being starting off as a generalist position over something more specialized?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I've seen like junior vegetation artists. I mean, I technically on paper, like I was a junior vegetation artist, but of course I did indie and I did Walking Dead before that. So, um, but I would say like for some people there is no option. So I know like weapon artist is a very kind of like very determined people when it comes to like just doing their thing. So I think it's very like hard to say right or wrong there because I would say like for a artist there is no choice. Like when you meet a weapon artist, you know they are a weapon artist. They are like so kind of like and they are so good at their craft. Like it's amazing to see.
That's pretty much it on my set. I do have a couple questions that I'm saving for the end, but
Yeah,
that pretty much gets us into a good place.
yeah. I mean we are almost there. So bear with me, everyone.
I have a last question, real
Yeah.
quick. Sorry. So, I just post in the chat. So, it's recommendable put watermark in your art since there's a lot of scam and fake job posting out there, or it's better to put a password to access your portfolio and you will share it to a recruiter, when he reach you. What is your best recommendation in terms of security?
Yeah, I I've been bad at like I would say it can be probably good to put your name in a band, like in the bottom banner. I would never watermark it, because I think it's just going to take away the art. But you can always like put your name like Studios does in the bottom. I'm usually quite lazy with that. I kind of put it out and just put my name into the source and hope for the best. I would say like the password thing is more like if you work a lot in NDA and stuff like that, then usually you have a web page like that. For example, me, I kind of have everything on my art station and kind of never watermarked it. And yeah, I mean I've seen my stuff being used as puzzles and stuff like that on websites. That's
Yeah.
the sad truth.
So you have your stuff stolen before too?
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's worse for kind of like true concept artists. Like that's
So
even more
you
than.
don't recommend watermark at all?
Like personally, I would never put watermark to my stuff. I feel like it destroys kind of like the art too
No.
much. But I think that has to be like a personal decision a little bit also. But I would
Yeah, I
never
don't
be
see
able.
that often.
Yeah, I would never be able to put watermarks. I spend so much time making it like nice, and then
Mhm.
and showing it, and I don't want to like put something on top of it, basically.
Yeah, it's like you get a hurricane, you put a hat on.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. So yeah, this is the website I talked a little bit about. This existed when I was a junior, so still going strong. It's a really cool website. Game dev map. You can basically click on these blue dots, and here I clicked on England, I think London, and then all the studios in London shows up. So what I did when I started was that I clicked on Stockholm and Gothenburg, Skövde, like all the cities close where I live in Sweden. And I just start mapping them out like here. So I had an Excel sheet similar to this, not as organized. That comes with time, but it was basically just all the names of the studios, and then I painstakingly went into LinkedIn and looked for that studio, and then looked at all their artists and see is there any person who joined before having any other like studios, and then I took that person and added them, and then I put their art station on a hot link like this, because then I could go back to every studio and see the blueprint of what got this person hired to this studio, and that for me it was very eye-opening to look at that and understanding kind of like, okay, this is somewhat the bar that needs to be filled to be able to work in this place. So I would really recommend to structure in some like way like this, basically. I would probably add to this and maybe add also other sections. So maybe if you have a person you can have a section there that you know someone there. I have in my personal one, I have a vibe section. So if I know it's a bad vibe, it's a red dot on that studio. Because for at least for me, it's important that the vibes are right at that studio. But yeah, this helped me a lot. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about like professionality when it comes to like all the things we send in and how we are appearing at places. So ArtStation, I would just make sure that you're kind of just writing everything correctly about you. But very important, I would say, is like link your LinkedIn. I would say set up a LinkedIn. I know like LinkedIn is not like it's not the most fun website, but I would say still a lot of recruitment goes through LinkedIn. I think it's very important to have somewhat of a presence there. I would say I usually use LinkedIn when I'm done with a portfolio piece and I kind of link it there. Or if I've done maybe a blog post or something, I just link it there. Because you never know who kind of like accidentally stumble on your stuff. And we talked a little bit about like luck, like everything comes down to luck. But I mean, this gives us like 2% on the luck parameter. And wherever we can add those percentage, I would do that. So I would definitely like get a LinkedIn and just set it up and link to stuff. Then when resume, I would say, so I have like a one page like this. One tip here would be do dot lines instead of like wall of text. Like it's much nicer to read. Like punctuations, what you do. Like for example, if you did like a game jam, I would put that in your resume. If you did, I don't know, at university, you did a game project, I would put like a punch list. If you did like the optimization, or if you did like light, like was responsible of light and stuff like that. And another tip would be, I have this kind of like nice one pager that I send to studios if I apply. But then I have also like a simplified one that has taken away like all the fluff. And this one is very nice to have if you're applying to a studio that has like a system that kind of butcher your application. So some bigger studios, I would say, like that has like a system that kind of like transfers it into text only, like they don't want like this fluff. It's nice to have that and send in, and I would say maybe it's enough to have have the text one only. But I like the one pager, so I have both. When it comes to like the cover letter, I would just take time to write, especially if it's a really studio you want to work in. Just write honestly, like why you want to work there. Another thing that can be good to do, like especially if it's bigger studios, is to, I don't know what it's called, but nowadays they have like systems that kind of like calls when you point out things from the application, meaning that you are like a good candidate. So it can be good to like incorporate if they have in the job application have like certain, I don't know, they mention lighting or something. Maybe you can try to add that into the text and stuff like that. I would say probably more towards bigger studios, like small studios. They don't have those systems usually. And then we can talk a little bit about like beyond portfolio, like other ways to get noticed. I talked a little bit about Twitter before. Like I would say that's fairly dead now. Like when I started, it was like job offers could go from there also. Like it was very like, I don't know, a big art community there. That died down a little bit, I would say. But I would say ArtStation blogs can still be quite nice. I think it's an outlet where you can kind of just write off. And here you can put like whatever you want, right? You can put like a work in progress and stuff like that. And I think it's a good, I don't know, like I learned a lot by doing ArtStation blogs, like thinking about like how I word things, how I explain processes, how I present even like early work, meaning like work in progress images, but in a nice way. So maybe instead of like taking a tired picture of my Maya viewport, I would take the object into Marmoset and render it out, and it looks like more presentable. And I think those small things help you later to kind of do presentation better in your portfolio. Like it's always a learning curve, all of these things. One thing I know is like when we're starting out, it's like the question like, what can I give? Like, why should like who should read my kind of like my tutorials or my breakdowns and stuff like that? But I would say there is always someone that is like earlier in their path than you. So there's always someone that can get inspired and learn from you. So I would say there is always a value, and maybe the biggest value is like for yourself also, like with all the points we talked about before. The other one would be like communities. So there's so many now, but I'm going to just take the one where I started out, and that's Dynasty community. I think like 10 years ago now. It's quite old one now. especially like when I was in a small town in Sweden, and I had one 3D artist friend who was kind of like similar, kind of eager on 3D as me. It was quite nice to stumble on a place where I think there was like 100 people on the Dynasty community, and everyone was like equally like hyped about environment art. My friend in real life was of course a character artist, so it was not as fun. But here I could like get feedback, just talk about like software. It's like became also a little bit like a boost in terms of like not just sitting alone and working on your portfolio. So I think like finding communities, especially when starting out, is so important, and maybe having someone or a couple of like peers to sit together and kind of problem solve with. I would say maybe it's trickier when these communities are very big, because then it's like not as easy to find that pool. But that's why I would like find in other places also, and we're going to talk that on the last one. I always want to mention level 80. I don't know how valuable it is now, but I think still it gets a lot of like traction. I did this a lot, my early scenes, and they always, when they kind of posted my breakdowns, I got a lot of traction to me. So they have helped me a lot when I wrote them. They are, of course, quite taxing to write if you want to write good stuff. But it also gave me a little bit like reflection when I was done with a scene to write about it. And then the last one is social events. So I think, like I said, we sit and work on our stuff. So it's quite nice to break apart from that and trying to find outlets where we maybe kind of leave the computer behind and do something else. So always when I kind of go to social event in terms of game industry, it can be a talk, it can be a drink and draw, it can be a game jam. I always come back like super inspired. Like I've heard other people what they do, uh, and it's just kind of like bringing back the fire basically, instead of maybe like having a long tiring a week where you're trying to solve something. Like going to one of these can really boost. And I would say also like here, when it comes to like networking online is one thing. I think like networking in real life, like when people can put a picture of your face in their mind, they know that you're a nice person to interact with in real life. Like you never know who's going to recommend you in the future. So I've gone to like figure drawing and kind of met game developers at those figure drawings. And you never know, like I would say social events can really also help. Drink and draws, for example, are really fun, and most big cities have them. I always want to add this one. It's a little bit what we talked about. Take breaks, go outside, be curious. So I think like we talked about set dressing and creating like interesting stories in your environment scenes. And of course, like usually we sit at the computer and take those stories from reference we find online and build basically. I think there's a value of just going outside and seeing if we can find things that we can incorporate into our pieces, because then becomes a little bit more us, I would say. And here we have the final checklist, so let's go through it. Does my portfolio have 1 or 2 excellent finished pieces? Is it focused on one style? It can be stylized, it can be realistic, it can be semi-realistic. I would maybe even like say like maybe focus on a studio, but usually a studio I would say is a style. Like if you say for Ubisoft, for example, like a lot of studios are doing Ubisoft style, I would argue. Does every project include breakdown shots, like wireframe, UV textures? And I maybe should add, are they presented in a nice way? Is my work presented professionally with like good lighting in a game engine? So very important, like we work towards game engine. We need to show that we are comfortable working in a game engine. So always presenting game engines. And then is my art station clean, like professional and easy to navigate. So reduce as much clicks as possible, basically. Any questions, Paul? We are at the last session, so a couple of slides left, but I don't know if any questions that's coming up.
Yeah, so we've had quite a few.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of questions asking for resources for like your critical vitae or your resume. So I think we could probably throw some stuff into the email when we email out the letter. But
Yeah.
one really good question was, and this is kind of poignant for most students and most people just starting out, is in your CV. If you don't have any professional experience, what would you recommend to put in its place?
Yeah, I mean, so I come from so I worked as in a movie store clerk, I think you call it. Like I rented out movies. That was where I started, and I sat in what you call it, like phone centers and stuff like that. So I had my beginning in kind of those type of jobs, and I would say like my first application had that in it. I would say for me at least, like if I look at like it shows that you have worked basically, that you are kind of like someone that can take responsibility and stuff like that. But what I would also try to do is like do it almost like as a what you call it, like a challenge. Can I find a way to add something without going into the industry? So we talked a little bit about it. Game jams, I would say those are a perfect thing that you could do. Maybe see if you can find some friends or go to a game jam yourself and see if you can find a group and build a game together. And then put that in kind of project section, for example.
Right. In the United States, I don't know if you've heard of it in Sweden, but we have something called Meetup. I know it's international, but I use that occasionally to kind of get together with other people in the industry. Let's see. So interesting question. Person was asking, and I get this a lot too. In a studio, are they very particular about either Maya, Blender, Max, ZBrush when it comes to specific programs?
Don't forget Blender also. Oh, did you say Blender?
Oh, yes, actually, Blender was in there. Yes.
So I would say it depends on the studio a little bit. Some studios you have to use that certain software. So we take Naughty Dog, for example. Their engine is incorporated into Maya. So their engine is Maya, basically. So then it's very hard to work with something else. At Ubisoft, we used all Blender, like the whole studio or the whole environment team, except one person who used Modo. And it kind of worked. I would say usually a studio defines one software as their key software, but then people are free to use what they want as long as it's not like super expensive for the studio. But of course, you're not going to get like the plugins that the studio builds. They will build towards their main software. And I would say like when you know one, you like if you're like you go to a studio and you say you want to learn kind of like the one they are using, they're going to give you the time to learn it also. So for example, when I moved over to Ubisoft and they used Blender, I got like time to learn it basically. I think I got a month where I could just sit and learn Blender. It was super nice.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, because I'll tell you right now, if I had to learn Blender, it would take me probably about a month.
Yeah, and don't do what I did. I built a car, the first object I built. I will not do that again.
Another good question. Person was asking, what is the best way to get connected with recruiters? Nowadays, it seems like everything is automated, and they're just kind of like clicking onto something, and they're not sure if they're talking to a human being.
Yeah, good question. I mean, and that's why I would kind of go to more like social events and trying to like go around recruiters. Like when I came to Stockholm, I went to a lot of like just I don't know kickoffs, went events for games and stuff like that. and just talk to people and jam with them. And of course, like I mean, I'm a very like comfortable person. Like I like to be at home, but I kind of pushed myself to do it, and I think that it helped me a lot. So I tried to kind of like my goal was a little bit to hear from every studio, like basically getting to know the local basically studio environment. So I've never kind of really gone through recruiters, to be honest. Like I somehow always try to avoid it, to be honest. There is probably like um, good paths there, but I can't give a good answer because I've never gone those ways, basically.
No, I
Uh,
definitely understand that. I myself work a lot through my network. Like I know people and know people and they know other people.
yeah.
So that generally is a way that I get like, either noticed or talk to other people. Um, there is, so unfortunately, this is two unfair questions right next to each other. So one person was asking, how long does it take to get a job in the industry when you're just starting out?
Yeah, it's
Vast
it's
answer on
like
that one.
how tall is the rope or what you say? I don't know.
No, I totally
Um,
get you.
I mean, if I look at myself, I'm thinking here, it took me 3 or 4 years, I think, if I don't count the indie studio. I mean, I went to university I basically applied to university without knowing what Maya was or 3D. I applied because I thought like, then I can work in movies was my idea. Then I can work for Pixar was my idea. But I went to a game school basically. I basically went and I would say like for me it's always about like time. Like we can't cheat time, so it's never going to be equally long for everyone because it depends how much time you put into it. So to be like super honest, like first half year at university, I kind of just went to the parties and stuff like that, and did just the assignments and kind of like stayed there basically, like just doing the assignments of school. Because I didn't felt any fire really, because nobody in the group of my class was kind of do like I didn't like see anyone like pushing forward much faster. Luckily, second year, I start talking to a person who I didn't have noticed before because he was home doing ZBrush the whole first year, and that kind of waked fire in me. So Josef, my friend, kind of forced me into like becoming really focused on just art when I was at university, or 3D art. So the second year kind of like really speed run knowledge for me because I did it so much. So I think what I'm trying to say is like it's going to be a one depending on how much time you spend. So that second year, I basically did 3D on my own outside of school every weekend, basically. And I did that at 3D school I talked about, like that online course. I did that during the summer when school was over. I just did like courses. So those things probably speed up the path for me. Together with second year, we started the indie studio. We jumped into Unity without have ever touched a game engine, and kind of forced ourselves to kind of just kind of work towards it. And that's much easier when you do it like with a couple of friends and having kind of like a vision to work towards. And of course, it doesn't have to be like working on a game. It can be I don't know, working on a game project together with someone, or maybe you have a character art friend. He does the character and you do an environment, or like I mean, all my environment scene has been kind of my own vision and my own drive to learn something basically. So I think a very hard question to
Oh,
answer.
that's honestly like that's a very difficult question. I know it's very individualized depending on like who you know, who you run into, how big is your presence on the internet. There's a bunch of factors that play into that one.
Yeah, I would say like finding the right person who give you the right spark, basically. So I had Joseph was the first one, and then Jason Stoke, the teacher I had in that online course, he showed me what I never seen an environment artist before that because I was like in school where there was no everyone was students. So I saw an environment artist for the first time, and he could also concept art, which I was like, he does two things. How? So that kind of brought me into like starting to paint and learning that aspect. So I think like find like and that's luck, right? Like finding that right person who's kind of nudging you in the right direction. So yeah, I hope that answered the
Oh no,
question somehow.
it's definitely a difficult question to ask. I got a better question for you. I have two more questions that I wanted to throw at you.
Yeah.
So really good one is how much planning versus actual production work would you recommend doing for personal portfolio work? Like a healthy ratio to keep that.
That's a good question. Um, I think we're starting out, like I talked a little bit about that. Like I think it's very hard to build something correctly in the beginning. I think there is a value of like building something small, getting it to the finish line and failing, and accepting that fail and learning from it, and then applying that again. So I had a lot of like try and error scenes that I never finished, but I always take a learning from them. Nowadays, I spend a lot of time planning because I think it's fun also, like doing the investigation and trying to almost like build the whole production before even starting the production. So for me, it's just kind of like a fun part. So I spend a lot of time on it. But I would say there is a value of adding somewhat of structure. I can bring up quickly. Let's see. Uh, Something that helped me a lot. I can just jump here quickly in the stream. Um, I think I show it here. I did this a lot. Basically a planner that helped me a lot. I'm a very like scatterbrain all over the place all the time. But having this every time I sit at the computer and okay, what's going to do today? And of course, like when we're starting out, it's very hard to like know how long things takes. So I of course had to update, but kind of started to make me like understand what takes long time and how I should maybe like optimize workflows and stuff like that. I still do these planners, by the way. Like they are so simple. Like it's just put green color when it's done, yellow when I'm working on it, and then red when it's not done. So it's very artist friendly. I see how much I have left to do basically. So this helped me a lot together
Absolutely.
with it.
I try to tell
Yeah.
my students all the time to be mindful of like how long it takes them to do things and to kind of take note of like that's how long it usually takes. And when they start feeling like they're getting quicker, you know, celebrate those little wins, but always having a good firm idea of like how long something will take you is always a good thing to have in the back of your head.
Yeah, and you learn like maybe what to avoid also, like things that like my hypothesis is a very good example. I basically model every ornament in the whole place there, but you barely see it. Um, like a month I think I spent basically a month doing the door ornaments basically. Um, Probably not going to do that again. But I of course learned something, but um, sometimes it's not worth it. I would say. Or maybe presenting it like I don't know. I never took like a close-up photo of the door that I spent a month on. Um, and now it's hard to go back and do it when you're like so many years away from the project. So yeah,
There's one question I'm kind of lost on myself. I know you have a little more experience with indie studios.
yeah.
Student was asking, if they want to get into a studio to get experience as an environment artist, how hard it would be to try to get maybe an internship or a junior position in like say like a smaller studio or an indie studio.
Um, I think it's very depending on country also. Like here in Sweden, we have like what do you call it? Tradition with internship. Like it's very common here. And it goes to the big studios to the small studios basically. Because it's part of the school system here. So it's very hard to answer without knowing like country.
Oh yeah.
But I would say like any game kind of studio you can enter is good basically. And I would maybe argue that indie, like I'm very happy I started in indie because I wear a lot of hats back then. Because there are so few in the team, so you have to kind of like adapt and do UI one day and then do concepting the new owl character the other day, and then I don't know, do a armor for the monkey character, and then back to environment art. Even if you love environment art, for me it humbled me a lot, understanding that my passion for environment art kind of doesn't completely matters when we're building a game. And then we need to be there for each other and helping each other. And I think that aspect is extra potent in an indie studio because everyone needs to pull their weight and be there for each other. And I think I brought that with me to every big or small studio I went to after that. So I can just talk from personal experience. I'm very happy starting in indie, even if the pay was not that good. It's like we went very low in the pays to be able to survive basically, but like we got like a finance. Long story, we went to E3 and got like an investor to our studio. So we got the lump sum and we just counted like how long can we survive with it, like how low can we go budget wise, like with our salary to stay afloat as long as time. So that aspect is of course stressful, but there's other things that are very nice.
All right. Last question, and this one I've had students with the same type of thing going on, is they want to know how important or how useful is it to have a background in, say, architecture, interior architecture, design, as a 3D modeler who's interested in going into environments?
I think it's a cool aspect. Like I've worked with a lot of people that has been in like industrial design or architecture, and they usually you can sense it. They have like a clean way of working to them. So I think there is a value, but I don't think it's a must. Like I know some studios have, they call them environment architects. Like I think Valve has it or had it at least. There is a good talk on YouTube or a podcast, I think, where they interview environment architect. I can see if I can find that and link it in the. It's quite old now. But I listened to it when I was like at university, I think. But it was kind of cool listening. But yeah, I would say it's not a must, but it's a cool, I don't know, extra skill. And there is many of those. At Ubisoft, I worked at someone that worked in fashion before. So that person could bring that into design and everything. I think there is always like a value. Or for example, as an environment artist, I like to paint a lot, and I can kind of incorporate that in my everyday work by, for example, doing paint overs when I kind of want to show something quickly or etc. So I think there is always a value of having those kind of like extra skills that are maybe not like specifically applicable, but they are there and helping.
Absolutely. All right. I think that's it on the
Yep.
questions. I have a few more, but I know we still have the Q&A coming. If you want, it's really just two more. Do you want to get those done now, or do you want to save those for the Q&A?
We can do it's just one part left, and then we can do the QA and we can fire away the QA basically.
Okay.
I think it's just 5 minutes left, I think. And then we get the nice QA screen. Getting hired. So I want to just talk about the process, what happens when we get hired. And I would say this is not every studio. The smaller this gets. But this is like a typical, I would say. So the first thing we are applying, So I just took like a job description here. I would say like the list here could be good to read through this, but don't feel like you need to know everything here. And another thing I would say is like it's very rare it says junior. Very few roles says junior. I would still apply to the ones that are not saying senior. Even if they say like 2 to 3 years. If you have a portfolio that looks like you have worked in the industry for 2, 3 years, then you might be an option. You never know. So I would still apply to that. For example, my friend Josef I talked about, he applied to a senior role, and he was still at our indie studio, so he was like not the senior, but they were they didn't want to miss out on him, so they opened up a junior role for him, and they hired a senior, and he's still at Coffee Stain where he went. So you never know, basically. I would say very rare that you get a job from applying to a senior role, but I would say these pure environment roles can always be an option. Something I did a lot also was like I loved reading these and like trying to dissect them, and like because you get a little bit almost like a ingredients list what you need to know as an environment artist. So I think it's a good teaching skill also, like going into these and kind of reading through them and asking yourself like, do I apply this to my work, or do I miss something here? And is there a way for me to learn this without being in a studio? But yeah, we apply. We end up at the recruiter. Most studios usually have a recruiter, even if they are a little bit maybe smaller. They usually have maybe a firm working for them. And usually there is what do you call it, like a software. Most studios I worked at has used Team Tailor, but then like the big ones like Ubisoft or like EA, they have their own. And here usually everything kind of comes in to the recruiter, and the first check is usually done by a recruiter. And what they look at is basically like, is this even a environment artist applying to the environment, or is this is a character artist? They might like put that person like on a no list, or if the role said like we only hire locally because we are not capable of doing what do you call it, removing. I'm just coming up with a word. Like moving over, so on. They might also put if it's not like a super strong candidate, then they might like do a light tick on it because like okay, I might need to check this with the lead or the art director. But usually, so many application comes in, so the art director or the lead don't have time to look through all of these because they need to work on the game also. That's the recruiter kind of going through and picking the strongest one. When I got like these lists, I thought it was always like interesting to look also at the ones that didn't come through. But it depends also like on many. Like if you have like 300 people, it's impossible to look through all of them. Like if you need to do work on your game also. But let's say we go through this. Like you are an environment artist, and they see you being able to work for them, or the recruiter at least. So you do the first call with the recruiter, and that's more about like just seeing that you are you, that you are a person that kind of is good at interacting with like the recruiter, because like environment game development job is kind of interaction between each other, so still important here. Sometimes already here they ask a little bit about like your salary, like what you have. The typical one is like they ask what you're earning currently, because then they can map out a little bit like what other studios are paying out. That's usually what they try to do, to be able to know kind of like, okay, what is every studio paying for the different roles, but also to know if they can meet your expectation. Maybe talk a little bit about the game, but usually it's very like format. And I would say after this, usually the art director or the lead has looked at your portfolio. So visually, they say you can do what, like visually, you can do what we need you to be able to do. But can you do it technically? So your portfolio maybe don't have any breakdowns. And I would say even maybe if you have breakdowns, they want to be sure that you can kind of like do the work in a time that they need, basically. That's where the art test comes in. You can find art test if you search art test on. So I did that before this meeting. Search art test on ArtStation search, and I've got up 3 different art tests. We talked already about the middle one, the one I did. Unions here. This is another. So there's different types of art tests. This is one I see sometimes where it's more about just modeling. But you need to model a lot. You model like a whole player space, but you don't texture anything. It's more about showing that you can create spaces that are interesting to navigate through, and that you are kind of like comfortable modeling. And then there is other studios on the other side here that wants you to push to the furthest. There you have Star Citizen art test, where they want you to like basically make something that could be a screenshot in their game, but you only have to work on this like small section. So every studio sees differently on these things. Sometimes it can be just a small diorama or a prop. But the tip is like go in on ArtStation, search artist, and you can like map out a little bit like what type of artists there are out there. And then second call, let's say the art test went well. They kind of like what they see. I want to just go back to art test quickly. One thing I would say also is like always check over everything you send in and make sure that you send in the right things. So clean naming convention, correct excellence. Everything they listed is there for a reason. So triple check. Another thing is like process and breakdowns. So here I would say there is a value of showing that you work clean and nicely. So I know someone that did an art test, and they went through kind of because of that they presented their breakdowns and their thought processes in a very nice way that felt very kind of like, I don't know, senior, even if they were just a junior. And they got hired because of that aspect. So you never know. Like it's not always just art. It can also be that you're trying to show something extra. For example, I tried that with this one. So the art test was actually to just model like small section of a wall. But I pushed it and tried to build like a whole kind of like section of like almost like a screenshot in a game with a very low budget. And you never know, like this worked. I kind of knew it would probably work because I went into ArtStation and I searched for everyone that worked at Starbreeze, and I went into their ArtStation and I saw that some of them had posted their art tests. So I got a little bit of a blueprint of what the art test needed to be to get into the job. So research is always valuable. Second call, that would be with the art director, lead, maybe tech director, and they just want to see how you are as a person. They probably know if you would fit personality-wise. Are you a nice person to talk to? Are you kind of like a team player? Like all of those things are very important. Like group dynamic in a group is very important for a game project to work. And there's always going to be different personalities. And I would say most personality works. But if you have only people that are pushing, maybe you're not looking for one more that's pushing, or the other way around. So that's why this call is there. And maybe also like just seeing like a little bit about the art tests and your art on your ArtStation. They will ask you a little bit question. Maybe throw you some hard hitting questions to see how you react. And if they are happy, they open up the fun one, and that's with the team. So you get to meet like the whole team that you're going to work with. And this one is usually always without the lead, without the art director. So you can ask whatever you want about the leadership, basically. So this is the fun time interview. And usually when you get here, you're kind of like, you have the job, I would say. Of course, the team needs to feel like they are jamming with you, or they feel like they want to work with you. So that's like the end part. But just be yourself and sense the room and sense how people are with each other. And yeah, after that, gonna wait a couple of days. Maybe same day, the recruiter comes back and they send you an offer. And then you can decide if you want to take it or not. And I would say this is the whole process, basically. Like I said, smaller studios might be a little bit smaller. Bigger studios might be a bit bigger. I've been to places where it's been 7 interviews. I've been to places where it's been 1 interview. So it depends on the size of the studio and the philosophy. But I would say this is like a simple blueprint of how it can be. I want to just talk a little bit about the first day as a junior, and I'm going to I forgot to put it in the show notes. I'm going to link to a video that's quite good. I haven't watched it in a while, but it comes from a junior, or he's not a junior anymore, but when he recorded it. So I think it's always like, for me, it's starting to kind of like wear off a little bit, like how it is to be a junior. So I'm going to link that. I would say I remember being very nervous, especially starting at Starbreeze. But same with Ubisoft, like still quite early in my career, and Fall Damage, because then I went over to be lead, and that was new for me. But that, like, every place, usually you get time to adapt. They know that every person needs time to adapt. So it's not the idea that you, especially if you're a junior, should start producing day one. Usually you get the desk, the merch, you eat probably lunch with your lead. It usually happens the first day. And now you get the documentation in front of you. So every studio has like their knowledge in documentation, and you get to sit and read that until you're bored, and you tell the lead that you are done reading. And then they usually give you a very simple task, like a prop or something, and you get to work on that a little bit. And they check in and stuff like that, and like slowly adapting. And then, like we said, if you are maybe a Maya user and they use Blender, you're going to give the option to kind of like learn Blender also, or the other way around. And I would say those are the first days. Not super scary, I would say. We talked a little bit about indie 2A and AAA. So here we have just a reminder, like what the difference are, I would say, like when we work in them. Indie, you basically do a little bit of everything. When I was in indie, I could do UI sometimes, I could do concept. I could go and buy Friday, what do you call it? After dinner food, bakery and stuff like that. Like could be everything, like filling up the coffee, stuff like that. Like going to the store to buy the big coffee thingy to put in the machine. So basically a little bit of everything. And then when you come to a mid-sized studio, you have like HR, all of that is like taken care of. So you can start focusing on art. But you become an environment artist that maybe gets to jump on like vegetation sometimes. Sometimes you do a little bit of materials, a little bit more flexible. And then if you come to the really big ones, then usually you are kind of like, because with the big ones, like the art style is so kind of like ingrained and important. You can't have like a bunch of different people do like the vegetation, or a bunch of different people doing the materials. They're going to look very like different. It's much easier to curate visual style if a set amount of people do a specific thing. And also, like, of course, like when you do AAA, it's usually like high fidelity, and it's much harder to get to that point, basically, like knowledge wise. So gonna have like people that are focused in those areas. We can talk a little bit about studio roles also, like take away these words so you all know what they mean. We can start from like starting as a junior, usually after like 2-3 years, some studios longer. You go over to intermediate. This is what you usually call like just an environment artist. After 6 years, you become a senior. So intermediate, I would say, is a junior with a little bit more responsibility. They might be there also a little bit for the junior. But when you move over to the senior, you are kind of like the parent in the room, because the lead and the principal and the art director is not always there. You are there as the mentor, basically. There as the person with like the calmness in the storm of deadlines, mentoring people that coming in, being kind of the right hand of the lead, basically, when they are not around. One problem always in past was like when senior kind of moved up in the ranks of the years, they always became leads. I would say lead is a very like specific role. You kind of need to want to be it, because it's a lot of people handling or personnel handling, taking fights for. There's a lot of wheels you have to like navigate, etc. So it's a very like maybe not so artist role. Of course, you need to be able to do art still. Like sometimes you need to be in production, but some people they just want to do art non-stop, just doing art. It was a little bit shame for them ending up as a lead, like losing their knowledge and will to do just art. So that's why principal artist became a thing. That's usually called expert artist also in some studios. That's just a senior that becomes like one kind of level higher. They usually look at the forefront. They experiment with new tools. They probably try out things that is not part of the current game that might be part of the new game. So they are a little bit like the what do you say, the bird in the nest that's going in first, basically. Art director is the person who's driving the direction of the art, basically, like the visual style, making sure that every discipline is following that. So an art director can't go and talk to everyone. They usually lean towards the lead, sometimes the principal, and making sure that they know kind of like what's working and not working, and then trusting them to kind of bring that to their group, because the art director needs to talk to the character artist, the environment artist, and maybe UI, VFX, etc. Some studios have creative director that can mean a lot of things. Sometimes it just needs you need to fill a role, basically. I would say usually how we define it is like it drives a little bit the vision of the studio instead of just a game. So if it's a big studio and they have several games or an identity as a studio, that can be the creative director pushing that. And then we have a couple of words up here. I'm going to just go through quickly. Level artist. In some studios, this can be like an environment artist. In other studios, it's that you are more in engine, like placing stuff. And then the environment artist is a little bit more kind of like building kind of the modular kits and stuff like that. A little bit different in every studio. But it's kind of like an environment artist. So usually if you see a role as a level artist, you can apply it as an environment artist. World artist, I would say, is a little bit more for open world games and big games. So it's the person who would do the terrain, make sure that the terrain is working, the big brush strokes. I would say these are not like that common jobs. And usually it's like more senior people doing it. This is like big responsibility. Prop artists is those who do like, the props, basically. This is quite outsourced nowadays, I would say, but you always have one or two in the studio, maybe. Some studios have a whole team So it depends a little bit on the studio and the philosophy of the studio. Material artist, like I said, like in big studios, if you want to drive a visual style, you kind of want to put this as a key role, basically. So all the surfaces look kind of like same. Lighting artist, that nowadays has become a role. Like I would say 10 years ago, there was a couple of lighting artists, but now it's a career, I would say. Now you have even junior lighting artists. Tricky part as environment art. If we want to make nice environment scenes, you kind of need to be a lighting artist. It's a bit unfair. Lighting artists, if you see their portfolio, what they usually do is they kind of buy scenes from Fab and light them, relight them, and show that they can kind of twist and turn different moods, and maybe also like optimize the lighting. An environment artist can become a lighting artist. So if you are keen on doing lighting and show interest, you can become a lighting artist. Same with vegetation. We talked already about vegetation, but same here. You would be kind of the person who's driving the vegetation. I would say vegetation is also very technical because it's an expensive rendering. But that's why you need to focus only on that. And then downtime, you might jump over to something else. And then tech artist is the person who's kind of like part of every team that's doing art. They're building tools. There is different types of tech artists. We talked a little bit about Houdini. So you can have a Houdini artist. You can have a tech artist that basically focus on materials or maybe tooling, inside the engine, outside the engine. Depends a little bit on the studio, like how many you need and what uses you need them for. But usually a person who understands and read art visually, like they understand what makes something beautiful, but they also are very technical and can build and program things for the artists. And we are at the end notes. So I have a couple of other things I want to add, but these are going to be sent out links in the mail. I'm going to run through these at least. So we have Kieran Goodson's blog post he did many, many years ago, where he goes through how from university, how he ended up in his first studio. He has also done a really good ArtStation learning series. One is about portfolio, the other one is about resume, and I think one is about interview. I would watch all three of them. They're really good. I have a blog post I'm going to link. There is some podcasts, 20 podcasts. If you ever need to listen to some podcasts. These are very random also, like it's like generally art, but it's not like specific game art. This was written probably 8 years ago. I don't know, some of these might be sadly not existing anymore. I should do an updated version because I love podcasts when working. YouTube playlist for portfolio. So I'm curating a playlist. It's a bit empty. This one, I have a bunch of different ones. This one is a little bit empty, but I'm going to link it and there might come updates there. And then I'm a big hoarder on ArtStation when it comes to collection. I have collections for most things. I'm going to link the one for like junior portfolios that are in the industry or likely to be in the industry, like that I would say is kind of the benchmark you need to be. And I think this is a very kind of good thing to look at, but also remembering that everyone has different paths and many of these probably have done a lot of scenes before this, but they might not show it on their ArtStation. So don't be intimidated if you go into one of these and they just have that scene. It's not their first scene. And we are here, Paul.
All right. So I have 3 questions. There have been a couple questions popping up, in the last minute. So I think if you're good with it, just people open up their mics after I'm done with the couple questions. All right. So first question is, person was asking, what are the pros and cons of working in a larger AAA studio versus working in like a smaller studio?
Great question. I think it comes down a lot to personality, like what you jam with. So I would say with like a big studio, for me, the tricky part was that I didn't get a face on everyone I talked to. For me, it was a lot of just mails and sitting and working on my own, basically. Especially after, like I was at Ubisoft when Corona hit, became a very visible then. And a big studio like that doesn't change. It's very hard to change, right? If you have 18,000 or what they have at Ubisoft, very hard to change something. But then I go to a smaller studio like Fall Damage, where they kind of revolutionized remote work. Felt like being in a studio, the way they solved it. I would say that's the biggest aspect. And you can be part of that change also, which I really like. With small studios, of course, in the past, security was one big thing. Like big studios were always secure. I would say that's kind of like disappeared now, right? Kind of equally now. I would say stress is maybe a little bit bigger in a smaller studio. You can be a bit more comfortable if you are comfortable. I was stressed at Ubisoft because I'm just that type of person, but it's not as obvious if you do the work that needs to be done in a big studio because it's moving very slowly. But in a small studio, everyone needs to be there basically, right? So I hope that answered the question.
Absolutely. And kind of a question that works off of this. They were asking how many days do you usually spend in office when you're working at AAA company?
Depends on the studio. I like
Yeah.
here in Stockholm, for example, a lot of studios have kind of completely gone back completely to studio. And I feel like they did that at the same time. So people couldn't switch. So I think sadly work from home is slowly disappearing, but you still have some studios. Some studios, I would say remote has kind of like very few ones left that doing remote. But I would say the ones that doing hybrid, usually it's Monday and Friday you can be at home.
All right. And there's one last question that I have on my docket.
Yep.
I may need to ask the student for a little clarification on this. But before you were talking about the different roles, and one of the things you were talking about was the level artist. Student JC Marcel, I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name, had asked about the ethics. How do you feel about the ethics of using, say, kit bashing versus building your own original assets? And I'm assuming that they're talking about world building versus like environment art.
Yeah, I mean, you're thinking in terms of in a portfolio, right?
Yeah, they didn't go very much in depth in it. That's why I was saying I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure what they were saying, but it feels like they're asking if they're doing like a world building type of portfolio. Is it okay to use, say, something from let's say Mega Scans or something to kind of get that all organized and build your own world?
So I would say when starting off, I would always kind of start trying to build on your own because you still need to be able to do that. So if you are only kind of like you don't know how to build stuff on your own, it's going to be very tricky to kind of like get a job in the industry, basically. So I would probably start there. But then, like on the question about Quixel and stuff like that, to fill out a scene that you have built parts of, I think is totally fine, as long as you can make it not visible that you're using Quixel. And what I mean with that is like the biggest problem of people using Quixel is that they're mixing maybe somewhat of a stylized or semi-realistic style that they built by hand, and I'm mixing that with like photogrammetry without blending them together. And that's the important part, like that you make everything cohesive with each other. If that is that you take your stuff and make it more realistic, or you take the Quixel stuff and simplify it, like take away noise from it. Some studio do that. So like photogrammetry is very common to use in many studios. Like for tree trunks is a very good example. But some studios like Red Dead Redemption, I can clearly see that they're using photogrammetry, but I can see that they are like reducing noise to kind of fit the rest of the world that tree trunk is sitting in. And I think that's kind of like what you want to show if you're using kind of like Quixel.
Absolutely. I think I remember hearing that like I think it was like Frozen 2, they had used some Quixel assets, but reworked them, retextured them, and just used them as bases.
That was all
So,
questions, right?
yep, that's everything from me.
Uh, Jacob, do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Of course.
Thank you, first of all, very much for the presentation. Very, very, very well put together and a lot of things learned. Looking forward to rewatching this. My question is for it's somebody who may have not worked a couple of jobs already, but even for people starting out, I had the experience of being lowballed at a studio. I was told I was being given the higher offer of what a studio would usually pay, and down the line, I found out that was far from the truth. My question is, for people getting a job and getting that offer, which is very exciting, it's very easy to kind of say, well, I'm getting an offer, I should just agree. What's your suggestion if you're feeling like you aren't being offered the fair compensation? What are your suggestions on counter offering?
So I've actually, it's a great question because I've lived that myself. Starbreeze, my first job, I basically was offered salary I could earn at a normal fast food restaurant, basically, like very low salary. But I took it just to kind of get into the big city, but with like the sheer determination to prove them wrong. So I used it as a fire to kind of like kind of show that I have a bigger value. If they can't give you that, then you have to basically just kind of like try to like move to the next place, basically. And that's kind of what I did with Ubisoft. And of course, I got a little bit higher with Ubisoft, but to be honest, they lowballed me also by not counting my indie time as game development time, which I never agreed with. But I still took the job because I knew the value of having Ubisoft in my CV, the knowledge I get from working with like Ubisoft people. I had a very low salary. I work basically as a senior, like everyday work. My lead even saw me as a not a junior, but he couldn't do anything because the systems were so locked in a big studio like that. So I had only one option basically, and that was either accepting that or moving on basically. And in that point in time, after many tries, I decided to kind of like move on basically. But it's very circumstantial, right? So it's very hard to answer like the right way every time, right?
That's true. Yeah, no, I appreciate the answer. Thank you so much.
And no worries. Any other questions?
Yeah, I actually have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I thought that was really intriguing when I learned that you did some vegetation, and I've heard some really high regard about your stylized work in vegetation. I've yeah, seen some of your work. It's very inspiring, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
But my main question being, I've learned different techniques of vegetation using alpha cards and full geo, especially with the new rise of nanite. Would you say that there's like a different usage for both of them, like different pros and cons, or do you think it just depends on style or project?
Style and project. So like usually I get the question like speed tree versus hand hand-built vegetation. And here I would say it's good to learn how to hand build first, because then you open you up to all the studios that don't have money to use Speedtree. So that's kind of the approach I did. And even at Ubisoft, our team built by hand. So sometimes that is the kind of like the way that group is doing it. But I think it's always good to be curious. And when you have kind of solved one way, I would approach the other way. So I'm actually, with my current scene, I'm going to explore the new vegetation system in Unreal. So I can't give an answer like the negative or the positive aspect with it, because I haven't sadly jumped into it. But as far as I know, when new stuff comes, it's going to be a lot of things that are not working correctly. So that's another thing. Like when starting out, I would usually not recommend to jump on the latest tech, because the tech is kind of unexplored. And if you're learning to do like good vegetation, like just the fundamentals of doing good vegetation, at the same time problem solving things that maybe even seniors have a hard time figuring out, then you're putting like two big mountains to climb. Kind of see the same thing with nanite. I think nanite now is starting to kind of be cleaned up and workable. But in the beginning, like the first years, it was like you couldn't vertex paint, like all of those things kind of was taken away. And that's why I always recommend to kind of like maybe we don't have to jump on the next thing right away. Yeah, at least not the first time we're doing something.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And yeah, because I've definitely noticed that there's been like this huge rise like lately, like especially the newest version of Unreal with nanite and foliage, and I'm very curious to explore that. But I know yeah, alpha cards have been used for a very long time now, so that was like the main technique that I learned, especially regarding like leaves and cutting them out and making atlases. So I think that definitely makes sense.
And I think like of course, like not every studio is using Unreal, and even fewer are using nanite. So I think great that you can do with alpha cards, because I think there's so many studios. I mean, like indie, I mean 2A, like still gonna probably use those workflows. They're not gonna disappear overnight, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. And like I said, I'm planning on I'm doing a whole project where I'm kind of like going into that, and I'm planning on trying to share my knowledge on my blog during the time. So hopefully at some point later this year, there will be a post about nanite vegetation on my blog.
Awesome. I have one more question too.
Yeah.
I've heard also that different times of the year, there's different points like where there's like going to be like more of like a job search, especially regarding like junior artists. And I've heard that specifically after like the holiday season, like around now actually, I've heard that studios tend to look more just because like winter sales typically like finish off to meet like big projects. Would you say that that is true, or do you think it just kind of depends on the studio and the project?
I would say a little bit depends on the country, maybe also. But yeah, I would say now you're probably going to see a little bit more coming up. I would say usually the dead time is usually during kind of Christmas break and then summer, like at least in Sweden. Like Sweden, the whole country goes on vacation during July. So every studio basically is a graveyard during that time. So in Sweden, it's impossible to probably find a job in July, but I would say probably not true for every other country. So a little bit depending on the country also, I would say.
Yeah, so yeah, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, like less in the summertime, but very likely more like at either the start or the end of the year, depending on country
Yeah,
and studio and what they're doing.
yeah, and then you have fiscal year, right? Like April, like the depending on the budget you get, stuff like that can also play a role. So I would say fall, spring usually. Like
Awesome.
I'm thinking when I've gotten my jobs, one in spring, one in summer, and one in fall.
Yeah, basically once a season.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And oh my goodness, this presentation has been golden. Like your PowerPoint is very well organized, and been
Oh,
taking a
thank
lot of
you.
notes. It's very, very awesome.
Thank you. Makes me very happy to hear. So thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi, I have a question.
Yep. Hello.
Thanks, Jacob. Yeah, great presentation, loving it. I think you probably I think you've answered the kind of question, but maybe you can elaborate a bit more, just in terms of like maybe coming out of VFX or animation into transitioning into games. And yeah, because obviously there's things that are similar in both, but if there's anything that you can add that you think is important.
You're talking about movies now, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. I would say the biggest one is real-time rendering, like learning, fully understanding like the ropes about like how we built to make stuff run in real time, basically. And it comes down to like we can't use endless of textures, or we can't use endless of triangles. So all of those kind of like approaches how we built in games. Simplification basically from movies. But then like I know a lot of people that come from movie, and the eye for fidelity they bring is usually like unmatched. So I worked
Right.
with I worked on a small project with people that worked in the movie industry, and it was like why like eye-opening how they understand like the fundamentals of movie creation, and how much that can bring into like visual fidelity basically. So I think
Yeah.
it's a really good tool to bring with you.
Cool. Yeah. One more and would you say there's a particular fit within the games that people coming from those coming from film animation fit into the games? Do you know what I mean? Does
It's a
that
bit
make
hard to, yeah, it's not hard to say, because you can of course come from Pixar, and then maybe like stylization would be better.
Yeah.
I would say it's more kind of just down to person. Like I would just pick the style you're passionate about. So like I talked about, like I did stylization at work in my indie studio, but I was passionate about semi-realism. So that was what I did every day I come home. And back then I played Last of Us, and that kind of like put like just hyper focused me on that style. And I think finding that helps a lot. Like it's almost like the calling of I knew I would never go to Naughty Dog as a junior, like almost like impossible from Sweden. But having still that kind of like dream really helped me to sit those weekends sometimes.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I know
Really
there is.
appreciate it. Cheers. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I have a small question.
Yeah.
So this is a regular question about resumes. So what do you think about recruiters suggesting taking out the pictures of resume?
Yeah.
Because they say they can kill the whole job interview. I mean, I had that before,
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah. So I know it's very depending on country also. Like in Sweden, it's very like always in the game industry, you have picture, I think. But I know in the state it's different. And then my other half here at home works in the architect industry, and they never have pictures basically.
Yeah.
So it's I would say it's very depending on country and industry, but of course, sadly, we still have that problem in some aspects. Um, and like yeah, I can't answer for the like specific country, but here in Sweden, I think it's very kind of usually common to have a picture in your resume.
Yeah. Another quick question.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had it here, write it down. So let's say you did QA test, game testing before. You think it's recommendable? I mean, I believe yes, to put it down on the resume and show down like the pictures of the games and all that. I mean, it's a big plus, I believe.
Sorry, I missed the question.
Yeah, like if you recommend adding that on the resume, like
Like
different type of games that
the
you game tested.
Q out being a QA, or
Yeah,
more like playing on free time,
like
or
functional testing would help out, like
yeah, I think
environments, artists, job
yeah,
positions.
yeah, I think that's value. Like if it's a set test, like we talked about that. Like I would say like game jams is similar. Like they're
Yeah,
of course not like real job, but they show that have an interest in the industry and that you have kind of like touched on it. So it doesn't hurt. Um, like I maybe wouldn't like if you have like a whole page of it, like then
Mhm.
there is no value of it. But if you add a little bit of that and then maybe you've done a game jam or a project with I don't know in a university, like those things are kind of like always kind of adding up in a
Right.
nice way.
Cool. Thank you.
No worries. Great questions.
I have a
Uh,
small one.
yeah.
Last one.
Yeah.
So this one is like regular question. So sometimes you have all the experience required for the open position and you still get ghosted by recruiters. So what do you
Yeah.
think is the appropriate way to reach them? You think like reach them on LinkedIn? I mean, sometimes the position is taken, which is fine, it's understandable. But what about if the position is still available or goes back to available? What do you think about it?
Yeah. Like what I would say is that we never know. Like sometimes it can be just that they have they like miss and have too many kind of like text in front of them and I read it and don't answer stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I would try to not take it too personal because I mean if a studio gets like 300 applications, one is gonna maybe sadly be missed. Then of course there is studios that are better at coming back than others. I have experienced studios that give a clear explanation why it didn't work, and then some that kind of just disappeared. So I think it's sadly part of the industry. And I would say I always take that as a little bit of fire if I'm not taken and pour that into my portfolio. Like,
Yeah, that's why
uh,
AI comes in handy, right? Like AI scan and search and all that.
yeah, I mean that's gonna also be a thing. I don't know like keywords and stuff like that. I heard has played a role nowadays. The people saying
Yeah.
that you should kind of like write in a certain manner.
Yeah.
I would say it probably depends on the studio. Like if it's a smaller studio, probably everything is kind of like being possessed by
Yeah.
a person still. But the
Yeah,
bigger ones probably.
I done my resume like at least 10 times and I'll try to do it like easier for
Yeah,
AI prompts and like something to make it easier to scan it. And I guess to get a short list, but I mean it's you never know. You never get
yeah,
to know what is the appropriate or what is the best way to do it. And it's
yeah.
always gonna be a mystery for me. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, yeah, it's like one thing can be good is maybe I don't know how, but like getting to know a recruiter is always like a valuable thing. Like I'm lucky being friend with someone I work on that side of the industry. So then you get a little bit insights from that. But in the end, it's like sometimes it's just not meant to be with that studio, basically.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much for your wisdom, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
no worries, no worries.
I did have a question in regards to networking.
Yeah.
I guess there are like different game conventions and all of that. So
Mhm.
going there, I know that with illustration, people tend to go in with their portfolios and stuff. But
Mhm.
given that all of our stuff is digital, would you recommend like a business card, like QR code to art station, or how would you approach that?
I would take a mobile phone, and if you get the chance and they're open to look at your stuff, like I think if they can look at it in a mobile phone, or even better if you have an iPad, I think that's perfect. So
Okay.
I actually test always my stuff, like my portfolio stuff. I always test towards my phone, and my iPad, because I know that some art directors, they look at portfolios on the fly, and they maybe just look at your portfolio in a mobile phone. So it's kind of important it works there also. But yeah, I would say if you can show the art and you can get directly feedback, it's like the best, because then you can kind of like go back and forth there, and and maybe getting like asking a question back and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I saw someone writing Light by Expo. It's my biggest dream to go there. It's on the
I
other
have
side of
a
the world.
I've been there twice. It's very good.
Yeah, maybe.
So
Yeah,
where?
Light by Expo, I think, is it in California, or I don't know where it is, in America?
It's in Pasadena, California.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I missed it this year.
Yeah, someone had a question. Sorry.
I have a question. Thank you for the presentation, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm a 2D artist, so I was wondering what sort of opportunities there are, especially within bigger studios for 2D artists.
Yeah, so I would say, like, of course, like concept art is the big one. And every studio is going to be kind of like different now. Some has sadly gone towards AI. I would say still there is so many studios that are pushing against that, because you have like the art directors are usually past concept art, like they've been concept artists. They don't believe in that path. So I think that's going to be a while until like I don't think everyone is going to go over there, but some studios are. So it would be concept art. You can do UI. I know some studios that have build bigger worlds. They hire people also to do, like, all the commercials in a game and all the branding and stuff like that needs to become made up. So there is specific artists for that also. Then you have for like story-based games, you have storyboarding similar to movies, but of course those studios are not that common. Like games that are very like keen on storytelling would have like an artist maybe doing like the storyboarding also.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Can I ask something too?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I remember earlier you mentioned that the game and just having a job in game industry isn't as stable as it was before. So are there like risks or cons of getting a job in the industry as an artist? I'm just wondering, are like any risks to be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, so to come back what I said, like the AAA studios when I started was kind of like seen as like safe haven, basically. Like they never did layoffs. Sadly, that's happening. We all see it. I think nobody knows when it ends and how it's going to end. Like still happening. So I think it's a very hard question to answer. Like how it's going to shape out. There is like different reason for it. The biggest one is like overspending during like COVID when it comes to like building up studios and building up teams. That money that was like generated during COVID, like people going home, could never be kind of kept up, and that's kind of why we get like a bounce back. Together with poor economy, and then of course like smaller parts with AI. So like yeah, I would say it's a bit unfair for me to say, because like I'm like in a different position basically. So I have always a little bit hard time talking as a junior. That's why I would like, my biggest tip, if I were a junior now, I would probably reach out to other juniors I've seen getting a job, and seeing kind of their viewpoint, because they live like kind of the world you're gonna live as a junior, right? Because it's a very kind of different world as a junior compared to someone that's been in the industry. Because, like I said, like in the like further you go into the industry, you get hired more by knowing kind of the right person in the right studio and stuff like that. So yeah, that would be my biggest tip. And the nice thing is like most juniors, they don't get that many messages. So I would say they get quite happy when they get like someone that asks them something. I remember when I got my first questions basically, and then and that was like super cool. So that would be my recommendation.
Repeat the recommendation again, sorry. Just reaching out to others that gotten a job before or something.
Yeah, that just enter the industry, because then you get like more of a like a an answer from someone that's doing kind of what you're going to do right now, right?
Right. I guess it also leads me to another question. Over the past few years in university, I feel like even though I want to get into game design stuff, I feel like I haven't had like a clear direction or anything. Like I do want to get into character art. That's something I want to do. So
Mm.
are there tips on finding ways to like learn that outside of school or just
Yeah,
like looking for resources?
I've been hanging out with a junior character art. You're talking about 3D art, right? Like 3D character art.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been hanging out with a super talented um, character artist. And what he did was basically, I think mentorships was kind of a big thing. There is, of course, like paid ones, but there is also like community. We talked about that. I said like Dynasty, that one is like environment heavy. I know there is like communities for character art. So I would say that's probably the biggest kind of like boost you can get, is kind of mentoring. If that is like a paid one, or if you can find someone that's doing it for free. Because it's like what I said, like I did that also, and that kind of like was my next kick. It clicked for me when I went to the mentorship of Jason Stoke, both in terms of like the knowledge shared, but also the inspiration of him talking about working on Guild Wars, etc. So I think that's probably my biggest recommendation. Then also a lot of resources online, but usually a mentor can help you to curate it. But technically, we can nowadays kind of like learn everything online. The problem is so much everywhere. I'm sadly not a character artist. I can't give you any good like tips like concrete like that. But I would say probably like I've done some characters, and I would say how I approached it was trying to do likenesses. Like that's a very hard thing to do. And then of course like really heavy studying in anatomy, like reading books and understanding kind of like not just the face, but the what's underneath it. The bones forms the face, etc. So I know I talked about my character art friend who feed through school the first year. He was always reading kind of muscle books, skeleton books, and all of that, and built that knowledge basically. And it really helped him to create believable characters, because there is rules, of course, with our body, even if it's fantasy. We need to apply it to make it feel believable. So yeah, that would probably be my recommendation.
Okay, so
Oh, I'm sorry. Jacob, if I could add on to that.
Yeah.
The founder of the school, Ryan Kingsline,
Yeah.
if you research his YouTube, he's been sending out some like short videos, just kind of going over his process and breaking down like anatomy and like kind of like Jacob was talking about the bony structures, the muscles, how they intersect and everything. There's some really great shorts. It's a great way to kind of start. And like Jacob was saying, there's a lot of resources online.
okay. What's his channel card? Is it like Vertex?
Ryan Kingsley. It's his personal one.
Yep.
Oh, Ryan Kingsley. Okay.
Funny thing, my friend I talked about, he watched Ryan when we were in university. So he watched tutorial from Ryan.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Also, I want to say this was a really great presentation. I learned a lot more than I could have. So,
Oh, thank you very much
good.
for saying that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No problem.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I got out of your presentation was the do's and the don'ts of a portfolio, as well as also like things to generally have in a portfolio, like when you were talking about like trim sheets and vertex painting and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's a lot, I know, and that's I don't know if I mentioned that. Of course, we don't need to add everything. The first one, like I would say, slowly add in things because I think it can be very overwhelming thinking, like feeling that we need to like add all of these things in, because then it can be a very big task. So I would say when it comes to breakdowns, just add maybe three of these I gave example as to start with, and then like add one for every scene maybe.
I can agree with that. I've actually been taking the game art program at Vertex, and yeah, oh my God, one of the best decisions I've made in my life. I learned probably more about 3D art in the 1 year I've been here than any of my other times I've learned 3D art in my past years. And yeah, like it was really good taking it, just at a timely pace. Like I would spend like a little bit of time like learning vertex painting and just apply that to like a specific project. Then I would do another project and I would learn trim sheet and then another project and just focus hard on just one aspect at a time. And I think taking it slow and steady was really quite helpful.
Yeah, I love that approach. I do the same. Always have a key subject matter I bring into every scene I do. So I do things I'm comfortable with, and then I add one or two things I'm uncomfortable with, and then it becomes kind of doable.
Yeah, it's been really good. And yeah, once again, thank you for the presentation. It's been great.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, I just have one question. So, I've been making a lot of like scripts and sort of like optimizations for my workflow.
Mhm.
And so I guess you could like count that as technical art. And I've also been building like sort of HLSL shaders and different sort of like PCG tools.
Mhm.
When it comes to presenting the scripting side of things, I'm just wondering if you have any recommendations because whether I'm doing like an effects tool or even just like a simple shader, I just have a bit of a struggle in terms of like how do I present my actual code work itself.
I can bring up two of my friends who they actually landed a job at DICE, both of them, a couple of months ago. So we can bring them up. So they work in the same studio as me. We have William here. He was in the press, and now we have Martin. Martin Holmström. So nice with these are two different examples. So we have Jam, or William, sorry, who his nickname is Jam, who is doing more tooling like blueprinting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We were actually sitting like when the studio folded and like helped each other figuring out cool ways to do this. It was very fun to everyone like shipping in ideas and stuff like that. So like a little bit of like I talked about, I think for most people that looking at the portfolios that are kind of in a picking order, some of them don't understand code correctly. So I think like moving pictures always is a valuable thing because it's understandable by everyone. But then of course also showing that you work cleanly like this. But GIFs like this I think is super valuable. We have same here with the blueprint we use for all the lights here. And it's just pleasing to watch. Like even if you're not technical, you kind of like this. I think also another value of this is that Jam shows everything here, which means that it's very shareable. Like people like will share this across the internet because it's a valuable resource. But that would be my other tip is share knowledge will always kind of like make people share it with others, so it will spread. So for example, Martin, I know he's going to release his Blender plugin he's working on now, and that's gonna like it's super nice. So probably gonna spread around nicely. But yeah, this is more like programming. He did the coding for for our scripting in Blender. So basically showing like with text and like what it does. So this was our collision tooling. We could do fast collision iteration. Collision is basically, for anyone, when you play a video game, this is what the player will walk into and not be able to move through. So what you model will be basically whole, like you can walk through it, but you need to build something that stops the player, and that's the blue stuff here. But yeah, so I would say these are two good examples. I have actually for you, like I said, I hoard collections. So I have a tech art collection that I can link here in chat that you can look at. There is good examples of good presentation in tech art.
Okay.
I hope that answered your question. I hope
Yeah.
that answered your question somewhat.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for your time and the presentation.
No worries, no worries. Any other questions? Are you seeing if there is any questions?
Oh,
Let's see. Nope. Nothing I'm seeing on my side. There's a lot of like conversation.
I think
There's
Marie's got her
somebody.
hand up.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see a hand. Let's see, I'm scrolling here. If a studio asks you how much, great question. So basically about salary expectation, right? There is Excel documents about what people earn. So I would, like we have a local one here in Sweden. But I know there was one passed around. I'm Googling here on the side to see if I can find it. Yeah. So I think these things are super valuable. And this one is a bit old. I would look around if you can find a new one, but this can give you a nice advantage. I'm going to link this one to you. The other one would be to start, like, for example, going to drink and draws and stuff like that, and just being with other artists. Usually these things will come up. And it gives power to us workers, right? Like sharing this with each other. So I try to always kind of like be open when people ask me, the other way around, basically. And then of course, like it's very individual. Like for example, in America, you earn probably like 3 times more than in Sweden because it's like a completely different system. So it depends, of course, where we're situation. I know there is a UK one and there is a Swedish one. There is probably one like for every kind of region. Any other questions? Or do we? I'm sadly not going to be able to read through if anyone asked something in the chat. So if you didn't get your question answered, someone unmuted there.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was gonna. I know this is more of like a reiteration, but just so I can remember. So is it necessary to like learn other programs that are similar to Blender, like Maya, for other game studios, or is it okay if you like stick with like one usually?
I would stick with the one that you're comfortable with. So if it's Blender and a studio comes to you and they say you need to learn Maya, then I would learn it when you are there, but don't feel like you need to do it now. Like you're not like opening more chances by knowing Maya, I would say.
Okay, so just stick with the tools for now then, right?
Yeah, like the one you're fast with, I would say. So for example, I use Maya and Blender, but I never use 3ds Max. But if a studio forced me to learn it, then I would of course learn it. Or Modo is another one.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, Jacob, great presentation. Very cool to see all of this. I was just wondering if you had any recommendation of like resources for self-starting or self-study, like YouTube channels or things like that that are good to kind of just start on the foundations?
Yeah, so when I started out, there was not that much resource. So I can talk from kind of where I kind of got my, what you call it, like motivation and stuff like that. There was no like 3D art podcast or YouTube channels. Like that was not a thing back then. Flip Normal is great. So I actually watched a lot of concept art. Like for some reason, concept artists, they made podcasts, like all of them. So that's kind of where I got my motivation. So I listened a lot to Ashtorp, Art Cafe, it's called, his podcast. All the episodes are still there. And he basically invited directors or art directors or concept artists that worked on big productions. And for me, it was always very inspiring to listen to someone that, in quotation, made it, and just sometimes hearing their path basically, and know like just hearing the early days for those people, and seeing myself in that a little bit, and knowing that yeah, it's not fun right now, but I'm gonna get there. So that I think that kind of got me the fire I needed.
Jacob, if I could add on to that,
Yeah.
something I noticed, like when when I started learning blueprints, and I was moving away from just strictly art, I was kind of dealing with a desert of YouTube where like it was all environment art, all prop art, all texturing and such, but I didn't have anything that was really kind of hearkening me towards like blueprints and like more complex stuff. So one of the things I would always recommend is like start to learn some of the jargon, some of the like the usages of language that are specific to that discipline, and start putting that into like YouTube or into the search engine. Otherwise, you're gonna have a hard time kind of finding some of these things. Like just trying to find a spline tool, it was kind of iffy whether I was going to get the right kind of tutorial. The minute I started talking to, when we had Matt working here, he gave me a bunch of things to kind of look up, and all of a sudden my YouTube feed just started blowing up with like different blueprints, different C++. And I was like, oh, these things are out there. I just didn't have access to them.
Who was it? Can you say what you are kind of interested in studying? Like, is it a specific field? The person who asked the question, I didn't see the name. Sorry.
I think it was TYK.
Yeah, mine was more just the basic, not a specialty or anything, but just in general, just um, building blocks. I'm nowhere advanced or near anyone in this chat's level right now, and I'm unable to participate in Vertex.
But are you thinking like game art, or are you thinking more towards programming, or do you have like some calling there? Like
more game art. I mean, I'm basically relegated to just playing around in Blender. That's where I'm at right now. So
yeah, so I think like Flip Normals is a great recommendation. I actually learned Blender through their lightsaber tutorial.
okay.
So I think Flip Normal is very nice. They had a podcast also. I don't know if they run it anymore, which is quite nice. Other than that, like I think like the beginning will always be a little bit bumpy. Like there is nothing there is nothing we can do about it. Like I remember when I started first year, I didn't know that you could model, like have objects being separated from each other. I thought everything needed to be connected. So all my first pieces I built first year was all just a mess of wireframe. And I think, yeah, we got the important part is just like pushing through that together with, I would say, either finding a really good course. And I mean, Udemy has fairly like cheap courses. So, for example, I learned blueprinting last year, and I did a course with a teacher who explained it very nicely. I think the course was about like $10 or something, and I got a little bit like I got some basic knowledge for blueprinting and felt a little bit more kind of secure in doing that, which led me a little bit to what Paul is talking about. Like I started to have like the words that you need to have to start looking for them. So I would probably recommend that, like a very basic Udemy, like that doesn't like cost too much. Start there, and see that it's for you before kind of like investing bigger sums of money, I would say.
Yeah, I'm a huge Udemy
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, same here.
Anybody, especially in the US, I don't know how it works in Europe, but like if you buy a library card and your library has access to Udemy Premium or LinkedIn Learning,
Oh, that's cool.
you can save a lot of money
Yeah,
just
we
buying a
don't have
library
that.
card. So there's a tip for everybody.
Really?
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone?
What's your what's your dream now? I know you said like you really liked Naughty Dog back in the day, but like what success are you looking for from where you are now and moving forward? Like what would be your ultimate, stage that you would like to make?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say like so I've taken a little bit off from jumping on something because I kind of soul searched, because I invested like 5 years in the studio that went bankrupt, and like with all the people that was there. We meet up still, everyone, like which is nice, and most people keep in contact, but that hurt quite a lot. So now I'm starting to get ready a little bit, and I would say one part of my me will want to go back to indie where it started, work on like, I don't know, simpler art, and maybe not shooting games, because I've done 10 years of shooting games now. So I would say maybe games that are a little bit more experimental when it comes to like gameplay and stuff like that. Like I would probably like don't want to work on like a shooting game again, if I could choose, basically. Yeah, working with other artists that are having similar kind of like mindset and interest, I would say. And I had that at the old place, so I'm hoping wherever I end up, it's going to be the same again. Great question, by the way. Any other questions?
Oh,
I guess. Oh, sorry. I'll let you go.
no, it's okay.
Okay, cool. I just have like a slightly personal question, because you had mentioned that it's not really necessary to have like a website, and it's better to just have like a clean art station. So I just spent like the last 4 months kind of like learning JavaScript and HTML and making and designing like the UI and the interface for my own website to sort of host, because I wanted to like outdo ArtStation and just sort of have like a better way to present myself. But just especially because of the technical work that I'm trying to do, so I wanted to like highlight that kind of proficiency. Do you think that that's valuable in this case, or should I just mostly direct people to my ArtStation?
No, I would say in your case, I would say there is a value. I'm talking more from the standpoint of like a environment artist. So I
Okay.
know like programmers usually have a website, right? And I would say tech art usually sometimes have it also, especially if it's your passion, like, and you can show that with your website, like then you show more of you than ever ArtStation can do. But it doesn't hurt to have it on both places, like if someone accidentally come into your ArtStation.
Okay. I'm still an environment artist, but I find myself getting easily absorbed in like, yeah, making tools and avoiding repetitive tasks. So,
You sound like the perfect tech artist.
okay, cool. Thank you.
I think there was someone else.
Yeah, that was me. I was almost about to ask if there is any like game jam places you'd recommend, but also another thing I was wondering is like, I guess if there's like one piece of advice that you wish you had when you started out, what would that be?
So game jams, I think I can't remember, but there is a website that lists all the game jams that are online. I will check there. I can see if I can find it and put that in the show notes later. Um, and some of those game jams are a little bit like you come in and you find a team. Of course, it's most fun if you go in person, but I would maybe start with an online one and see if it's fun, basically. Uh,
Okay.
the other question is really good. I'm trying to think here. um, I would say like I would just say it's fine that it takes time. Like there is no super rush, basically. Like a little bit what I talked about. Like it's okay if you built something and you learned by it, but it didn't get the fully piece. Like I would probably tell myself that. That like failing is part of the journey, I guess. And it's never going away. That's also a thing.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, this was great experience.
Nice to hear.
Yeah.
Seems like we all are happy with and if anyone comes up with a question, feel free to reach out on my ArtStation or LinkedIn, and I can come back to you if there is any personal question or so. So I saw someone asking about the web. So I'm gonna give all those links in the mail that's being sent out. So those are going to be part of the mail. But it's gamedevmap.com. I can link it now so you can check it out. I can actually show it live here. It's fun. I can click on Stockholm here. It's a bit like tiny, so you can like zoom in like this. So I click on Stockholm, and I get all the studios in Stockholm. Like 2 pages. Quite impressive for a tiny city like us. Because I think like it's very common to just know the famous one. So I would like go into every studio here, check if the art is for you, and then check what type of people work there, basically. Probably. I'm gonna link this also now. Seems like everything has been answered, Paul, or what would you say?
Yep. I was actually going to throw that question at you about the world map, but yep.
Awesome. Super fun that everyone tuned in for so long. Sorry for it became a little bit longer than I planned, but I hope that everyone left with a little bit new knowledge. We're going to do another one next month again. I think the agenda then is portfolio review. And I'm not completely sure how we're going to do that, because of course I can't look through endless, so like all portfolios. We're probably going to do some, I don't know, Paul, we have to figure that out, lottery or something when we go live. So it's fair for everyone.
Yeah, I think a good conversation tomorrow would be definitely a good thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I wish everyone, I guess you can say, a nice weekend. And hope to see you in a month time again. Have a good time, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you, Jacob. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.